Welcome to the Purple Rock Survivor podcast. I am John, represented by this beautiful avatar. I am joined tonight for the finale of Survivor Edge of Extinction by none other than the fearsome foursome, the not trio, quadro that started it all. Let's go with that. It is Andy, Emma, and Matt. And I have to say, just for old time's sake, Andy, I'm going to start with you. How about them Edgic charts, buddy?
I honestly almost buy their excuses this season. Like, it is
never
hard.
Admit defeat, Andy. Never admit defeat.
No quarter, they would never give us.
Matt still thinks Savage won Cambodia.
I think he did. I think that happened. Yes.
Yeah. Honestly, in some ways, I almost don't want to talk tonight because I just want to look at John's avatar.
It's so amazing.
So good.
I'm so incentivized to talk constantly.
Oh,
yeah,
no.
a zombified, Michael Chiklis or whatever is our god now.
So at some point, we should maybe start discussing this finale because I feel like there just may be a lot to talk about. So, we've waited this whole season and said we're going to hold off on evaluating the theme until we saw it all play out. We've seen it all play out. Emma, what did we think?
Well, we think Chris is very handsome.
This is confirmed by the internet. Quick Google search will tell you that is accurate. Matt, what about you?
I think that the theme yielded the funniest possible outcome that I could ever imagine, and I was laughing my ass off all throughout the finale.
And Andy?
Honestly, I think it fucking sucks. we're trying to be positive, because as much fun as some people find it, complaining angrily every week is not fun. And, this show isn't good enough for us to be complaining all the time about it. But, it's less than ideal when the winner of a contest just parachutes in at the very end.
Yeah.
So, we saw it in action, and I'm like, no, I'm good. That didn't really work for me.
So you guys may remember that when we had the legacy advantage in previous seasons, I had said, whatever you thought of it as a game mechanic, it was just bad TV because it required you to remember who had it, despite it just like weeks at a time being completely irrelevant to the story. This season, they did that with the fucking winner of the game.
Yeah, and that's my point. Like, I don't even care that much about how fair the winner is. I'm with Matt a bit that, it's kind of funny in the way that it plays out, especially in how much it bothers purists. And I'm even with people who feel like, this is not what Survivor is. I agree. I view this as kind of like an experimental season. This is, Archer goes into space or something. It isn't what the show is, but it could be all right. But from a structural entertainment standpoint, this kind of felt like if, like, on Sunday night, Nymeria rolls up and takes the Iron Throne. Just like somebody who, like, was not there at all for most of it is suddenly like, yep, that's what it was about. It was about him all the time.
You see, what it is we have finally seen what a Deus Ex Machina looks like in Survivor. God reached down from above, placed Chris back in the game, and then he won. And
I will
it's like,
say, if God were going to create anything, it would be Chris.
Yeah.
I like the only way people could have been more angry about it is if Joe's ball didn't roll out. Like, this almost was Joe Angelo. Yeah. This is almost what they wanted.
It was almost exactly what everyone said was going to happen. Also, if I could say, it's funny that you bring up the Game of Thrones and Nymeria, because like Rob Sesternino actually had a good apt tweet talking about like, if Gendry ended up on the Iron Throne since he was gone for seasons.
Gendry has been far more present than
for sure. It's also a good fit because Gendry is very attractive.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not even joke. Like, I know a lot of people are upset that the winner of this season just kind of showed up in the final few votes and just started playing then. I'm less upset because I already saw Ko Wrong. Like, it's happened before where somebody just started playing at the very end and won. It's that, nobody was thinking about this dude. Like, even our dick jokes had run out like ages ago. The show didn't even feature them. Because, like, even if we were thinking about people on the Edge of Extinction, we were like, yeah, sure, he's pretty. But until he shows up reading, like, his letter on a rock, we weren't even thinking about him. We were thinking about returnees.
Some people predicted that he was going to come back and make it to the final 3. I don't know.
Yeah, and about that, do you feel like they got like everybody to read it on the rock just so that they knew they would have the winner?
A lot of people
when he swam out there in red, they don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like you don't bother with Reem. You just sit. No, you just sit where you're at. You're good.
You definitely don't bother with War Dog. He ain't winning his way back in.
Yes, that's the great Gabby Pascuzzi said. War Dog, man, I've seen you in challenge.
Exactly. And we got one final. Him
and Ron.
It was the icing on the War Dog cake to watch him supremely fail at that challenge the way we all hoped he would.
Honestly, I was getting angry at Ron in that challenge because it's like, Ron, you have to do that. You don't ruin this for us.
You gotta be better than War Dog. You gotta be better than War Dog, Ron. I was the same way, Andy.
And I feel like Aubrey was actually worse than him. I think he was like on time.
Aubrey had an advantage. Girl, what happened?
Apparently, learning how to like walk around ropes isn't really a learned skill. Isn't something that you can practice in within half an hour. It just is kind of in the moment is a thing that you can do or not. It's not like I figured out how this puzzle works or how the ball rolling works. It's just like, oh yeah, okay, so I crawl through here as fast as possible. I'll remember that 20 days later. Right. And I think what might have happened this season is they just really underestimated how many people would stay.
Yeah. No, I think for
definitely.
Sure. Yeah, Lawrence Ponderosa, I know you guys haven't watched it yet, but Lawrence Ponderosa, she actually talks to, and obviously she didn't go to Edge, but she talked to Reem and said that she felt like Reem really set the tone. That, I mean, obviously there were 2 exceptions, but that the majority of people who are getting deep in the game were probably thinking like, if the first boot hasn't pulled the sail, like I can't do that. Like I'm not gonna do that. And so because she didn't give up, which, good on her. It just kept anyone except for, Keith and Wendy, but they were people who you could kind of see quitting in the regular game too. And this is just a different scenario.
Even they didn't quit until like it had reached like an
right for sure.
To quit.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you see War Dog decide to go out there knowing that it will be a challenge to get back in, like, okay, everybody has just committed to this.
Yeah.
So suddenly Edge of Extinction is everybody. There's no quitting. There's no drama because they're not like trying to drive each other to quit or, get one up on each other. So then there's no story. So now they can't focus on what if our winner is there the whole time. In their mind would be like, cool, we get to feature Joe more often. But as it turned out, it's just like there was nothing there. They couldn't do anything. They were reading stupid letters. It's like the longest segment ever. And there was just like, so they couldn't even like check in with the winner that often because there was nothing to check in with, and the time had to be split among like a dozen people. Checking in just with Chris would make it painfully obvious what was going down.
Right. And I think there was also the thing that there were so many people out there that they probably just all started bonding, which was a thing that we predicted. And them bonding and getting along and everything is not great drama to show on your TV. So there's even less incentive for them to show what's happening out there other than the random things like the letters or passing advantages along or things like that. I mean, it's just a bunch of people hanging out. Although, had you seen them all getting really close, it would have really hung a lantern on the fact that someone coming back from the Edge of Extinction would have a huge advantage with the jury.
Yeah, but you know what? That's been true. It was true for the people coming back from Redemption Island. At least, like, if it were Ozzy or Tina, maybe less so Andrea. Just as I don't know if it would have been an advantage for Aurora, for instance. And I think what Redemption Island was able to better spotlight people because it was only like 2 or 3 people at a time.
They kept knocking people off there.
Yeah. So I think like that more than anything was how this failed from a television standpoint. That they created something that was completely drama free, that was overloaded with characters, and then, oh my God, how do we make a season where like somebody who's just sitting off to the side almost as long as anybody else out there wins? And it turns out you can't really.
Right. Yep. I mean, also to contrast this with Redemption Island, in a way, Redemption Island's like constant challenges made for easier TV because it had a focus then to the people who were out of the game but still in it. But the problem with the constant challenge is that it just ate up so much more airtime. Where Edge of Extinction, it allowed it the freedom to, only focus there when it had to, which normally would be great, except that they had to focus there more because our winner was there the entire time.
But even then, they didn't focus there much because
there wasn't anything there. Right. So it's like, this twist kind of caught them in both binds there, where they couldn't do anything. And here's the thing: I still think it would have worked had they ended it at the merge, which is what I said. Which is what I've said. Every single twist that they've tried to do, where like people stay in the game, ended at the fucking merge.
Yeah, I was ready and almost excited for a Rick Devens win. So that tells me I would have been 100% fine with it ending there. Moreover, for the people who are like, no, it can't be. Think of who the early merge, pre-merge boots tend to be on this season, and how angry that makes us as a community. How they fit certain demographic patterns. Maybe they should have a 2 elimination thing because of how specious that it is. How people keep getting targeted. Maybe I could even see a positive benefit for, if you get voted out pre-merge, we'll give you another chance because you had 3 days, or because people are racist or whatever. So I could honestly see it being okay because it didn't bother me spending time there, here or Redemption Island. It's just that. Man, the winner was not on the season, and that's a bit of a problem from a television standpoint. It's not hard to imagine that people who haven't seen the GIFs had no idea who that dude was.
So hang on, I want to run down. I have a bullet point list of madness that was contained within this final episode here. Number 1, half the people in the final 6 met Chris for the first time in the finale.
and they spotlighted that. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Chris actively played in 4 episodes of this season. He went to a total of 5 tribal councils, 6 if you count final tribal council. 1 of them he was immune, 1 he was voted out. 2 of the final 4 players in this game had been voted out. Reem spent 3 days with Chris in the game. Sorry. Aubrey, Joe, Eric, Julia, Ron, and Aurora spent none. All of them voted for him. Every single name that I just said voted for Chris at the end. They gave Chris an idol after he came back when he had exactly 2 votes to survive. Sorry, no, 3 votes, I guess, technically.
No, really? Just 2? You don't survive
Fire.
You get to get voted in, but they can't take you out. Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying, is he had to essentially survive 1 vote, and then he had an idol. He got fucking 9 votes at the end because the jury was so massive. There was still enough room for Gavin to get 4 votes. And he got 9 votes despite actuallying the jury. Bravo. What an insane clusterfuck of a finale. Listen to all those things. I can't believe all of those things are true about this season.
Now, shout out to... No, go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, and if anything, I think that undersells the madness of the finale because that's only what happened to Chris. Yes. You didn't talk about anything else that happened. And there is some crazy stuff that happened.
Yeah, I mean, we have other things to get to about
I know. And I'm not jumping ahead. I'm just saying, this finale was nuts.
It was.
Well, quick shout out to Jeff Pittman at True Dork Times, though, who informed us that how insane it is that he was only at 5 tribal councils, still only 1 less than Michelle. So as cruel as my joke seemed, there's actually some stuff to it.
Also, hold on a second. I want to dispute the 5 tribal councils because he got voted out 3rd, right? So that was his 3rd 3. Tribal council, right? That's Indeed. 3. Then he comes back and he's at final 6, final 5. That's 5. Final 4 is still a tribal council. He could not be voted out there, but it's still a tribal council. I think it sticks. I think this is the same number as Michelle.
I think that's fair because while you're not voted out per se,
you are vulnerable.
You're not taken. Someone is chosen to go to the final 3. So there's still some politicking there. Obviously, what happens at that tribal effect thing, before the fire making challenge, as we saw,
It's also should be noted that is the only tribal council where Chris was vulnerable from coming back in the game. So, by his own decision, right. But, he was immune for the previous two due to, things that we will discuss. And for everybody out there, and maybe actually we do have a thing about this later, but you know what, I'm on your side. That idol that he got was insane and bullshit.
Yeah, that's totally insane.
Crazy. No, there is
ridiculous. I don't know what they were thinking.
Yeah, I mean, they're like consistency, but there's no time. There's no time.
Yes.
One note is he did at least have to give it up. If he gives it up to anybody other than Rick, he probably doesn't get. Well, I guess maybe Lauren gives it back, but like he might not get it back. It was one little chance, but no, you can't hand him an idol when there's only two tribals.
And the fact, I mean, obviously some, whoever had come back at the merge could have been gone, but because there was someone he had also been voted out of the game with, that was someone, like, the reason Rick has said is, like, because he thought, like, he felt like he had just, like, crushed this guy by betraying him the first time, and that he was, like, so sad, and that they had really bonded at the Edge of Extinction, and he just really felt, he couldn't do that. And if there hadn't been like the Edge of Extinction, like that wouldn't have happened.
And here's the other crazy thing about giving him an idol. It's when he came back into the game, there were 2 live idols in the game.
Yeah.
Rick had one and Lauren had one. If he gets his idol at 5 and they don't play theirs at 6, there are 3 live idols. You could have only one person be vulnerable at Final 5.
I don't know why they think, like Jeff Probst and presumably other producers, but I don't know why they think Advantage Get-In is something to hope for. Because, like,
and we are the podcast that will not shit on the concept of having too many idols, because idols in play can be a very interesting, entertaining thing. But for the love of God, he had 2 votes he needed to survive, and you gave him an idol for one of them. That's ridiculous.
There's no way around it. So we're on your side there, internet. I don't know if anybody would be on the other side. I think even in his deepest, darkest, Chris was like, that was kind of insane that they gave me that idol. Right?
He's like, I'm not giving the money back, but like,
no. I hope Chris just like rolls with this. Like, that's the one thing I respect about Michelle is that she'll retweet people, complaining about her and stuff. It's like, let them like bathe in their tears. The money still spends.
Yeah.
But it's just you can't like put an idol out there. I have no problem with re-hidden idols at 5. Idol is supposed to be live to 5. That means there should be an idol until 5. But just handing someone one, you can't do that.
It's
at least make them work for it. Like,
to the idol, I would feel better with.
Like I obviously don't feel bad, but I like almost feel bad for him just because I know, like, from pregame stuff, he is a huge fan, like an evolution of strategy listening to fan.
Yeah.
And so like, I agree with you, Andy. Like, he probably does know that, like, he is. I bet if he was someone watching this show, he would not be super psyched about that being, a thing. But hey, like, what's he supposed to do? Be like, oh no, I will not accept this. This is, against the integrity of the game.
It must really stink to be a huge fan of the show, and then when you win, everyone on the internet that you probably interacted with when you were a fan are like, "This is one of the worst winners ever," because it's happened a bunch of times recently. It's happened so many times recently.
I gotta hope that like Chris isn't an internet fan, because that would be such a waste of looks. Just you don't need to be in this world where we use avatars and such to hide our, hideous visages. Go out there, live your life, Instagram it up, and then watch the show on television. Maybe even in bars among people. But please don't be somebody on Reddit. You can't look like that and be on Reddit.
John's avatar is giving Chris a run for his money, though. I gotta say.
I am the beauty king.
So I think we're
made this a YouTube beauty clip.
So I think we're getting there. We realize that it's insane that somebody just came in and won from a storytelling perspective. And you know what? I get why people are salty about it. It's perfectly legitimate. If this is what Survivor becomes, I do think it'll be bullshit. I don't think this is what Survivor's going to become. But what do we think of him as a winner? Like, let's evaluate his actual win.
Can I just judge him based on this last episode and what he did?
What
within
else are you going to judge him on?
Yeah, exactly.
Because he wasn't even that featured in the first 3 episodes.
Yeah,
No,
that is something that, like, in retrospect, like, sure, I get not doing much on Edge of Extinction, but it kind of, and like normally we were like, oh well, he went out third, and like, oh, maybe it's not that interesting, but it wouldn't be crazy. Like, I don't think people would think it was crazy that they like featured the the very in shape provider total
Alpha
threat
type
guy, who then gets blindsided largely, maybe not but like largely for something that isn't quite his fault. Like, yeah, maybe don't tell Ward, but like that whole thing got so twisted, that it's a little fluky. Like, you can see why they would feature someone like that, and like he didn't get.
No, I mean, he wasn't hidden. He was certainly exposed in some ways. But yeah, he wasn't like, oh my god, oh yeah, that's the returning Chris. He was like one of the non-returnees. Is he Chris or is he Eric? We don't know. And then he's gone.
I think Emily knew Chris versus Eric.
Yeah, people keep talking about how I couldn't, like, Gordon Holmes was like, I couldn't pick him out of a lineup. Oh, who's Chris or Eric? Oh, I didn't remember him at all. I remembered him.
Yeah, you have a lot of commenters that can pick him out of a lineup.
You guys have both talked over each other so much that I didn't understand anything.
This is the joy of podcasting. Is normally like I would be editing the episode the day after, and I just constantly have to look for like 50 times that Andy and I talk over each other and edit them out. I don't get to do that this time, so enjoy the clusterfuck of a podcast that is celebrating this clusterfuck of an episode.
Yeah, it's really just fitting. A live typing cat is what's going on. Matt, you were saying, can you judge him based on this episode?
Oh no, I can. And what I was going to say before we got sidetracked is, say what you will about how he got here. Say what you will about everything that happened before. This is the most impressive final episode since Natalie Anderson. And I mean that completely, 100% sincerely. What he did in this episode is actually impressive. He got someone to give him an idol at Final 6 when he is an obvious threat. When everyone on the island is talking about how much of a threat whoever comes back from the Edge is. Okay. Then he's he plays his own idol at 5, which, the legitimacy of that idol, you can call into question, but he has to convince Rick to give him back the half of it to even make it work. And Rick does. And Rick knows he's safe. Rick knows he's good. He doesn't have to do that. Rick should be trying to take Chris out, but whatever. So he's, say what you will about his non-existent social game. Like, he's already convinced 2 different people that are left in the game to work with him and help save him. And then he makes a decision at Final 4 that cost someone the game last year. And he makes this decision probably because he saw that season, and also probably...
Sorry, if you don't mind me interrupting.
No, I know he saw that season. Okay. I know.
Yeah. I don't mean that he saw that season, but like that he said pre-game that if he was in Final 4, he thinks Dom had to make that decision.
Oh, I didn't know that part.
Yeah, no, Dalton Ross actually showed, like, after the finale, showed that from his pre-game interview that he said that Dom like had to have made that decision, like that he should have done that he thinks if he was in that position that's what he would do. And man, way to like call your shot, put your money where your mouth, like all of that. Like, there are a lot of people who talk about plans they have, and when you're faced with giving up immunity at 4 for that kind of risk, you might not do it.
Okay, okay. I mean, I see Andy just go, like bursting when to talk, or maybe he's just uncomfortable. I know. But let me just say this: he. Anyway, what I was going to say was this: the fact of the matter is that. What he did at 4, I actually don't agree with the analysis that Dom had to do that, because I think that situation was close enough.
Saying that's what you're saying.
No, I understand that. I'm saying that situation is close enough that I understand Dom not doing it. But in this situation, Chris knew that Rick is beating him going away. Chris knew that he's much better at fire than the other people that would be competing against Rick.
He watched them make fire.
He watched them. He tried to coach them. And guess what? He was like, no, I'm better than them. What am I doing here? And so to give up the safest bet in the game, which is you being in that final tribal council, you gain a chance to argue your game, to take out your biggest enemy, your biggest obstacle to winning the game, that takes serious chutzpah. That takes some serious, just like, I am
Serious
making
balls,
a
are you
move.
gonna say? It takes some big balls.
Well, we don't know.
Yeah, we don't know about that.
It takes some BDE to be able to do stuff like that.
A lot of people were tweeting about that, and I mean, I'm like, well.
I mean, we don't know because something keeps getting in the way.
That's all I'm saying.
Well, and to Matt's point, like it really does. Like he was betting on himself there, and we've talked before about how, like, if you essentially have no chance to win in final tribal council, sometimes you have to take a huge swing to win, to make yourself in a position to possibly win. He did that. He said, you know what, like, I saw these other people. I am my own best chance. I'm going to make myself my best chance. I either lose in fourth place or I end up losing in second place. I'm going to try to get the win instead. So
I plus either of those is better than having gone up third.
This is true. This is true.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, the math is simple. Is your chance of beating in fire better than your chance of beating in the finals?
Yes.
And actually, I guess there's one more variable. Is your chance of losing in fire pretty much as worse than the chance of the other people losing in fire? Because if you know you're going to lose, he's going to lose to Rick. Everybody was going to lose to Rick. You know how I know that? Because every goddamn person on that show told us that Rick was going to win. Yeah. So I'm almost a little sad that we were robbed of the internet's tears on that one. But in some ways, I honestly
we got something much better, Andy.
I enjoyed that they got their monkey paw wish. But yeah, and that's just that simple. Whereas for Dom, it's not that. It's if Wendell's going to win this fire making, that part is obvious. But will I lose to him? And in fact, is my chances of losing to him in the finals greater or less than my chances of losing to him in fire? And frankly, it's hard to imagine that could be any closer, given that he lost by one fucking vote in a tiebreaker. So,
Yeah, like I do think, it's hard to say that for Dom because it was so close. And I'm pretty sure he thought that Donathan was going to vote Laurel too. So he thought he had it, which is fair. A lot of people thought Donathan might vote Laurel, but I think as both that season and this season has shown, people aren't always going to just vote for their best friends. Nope. Especially if they know their best friends are going to lose.
Yep. Some people don't like to waste their vote in important decisions.
Yeah, and we don't know that Dominic was going to beat Wendell. Wendell's a guy who works with wood. Like, it's a good chance that, like, he was pretty good at making fire.
I'm pretty sure he's, like, not trying to burn his furniture.
Hey. I live in Philly. If there's one thing I know about Philly furniture, it's that it all burns.
It's flammable.
All burns.
That's right. They just do that after every championship win.
We only get like one every 10 years at best. Right. So
I know Emily was laughing because she's heard all the backstage talk about Wendell working with wood. So anyway, I agree.
I was laughing about the championship thing. Actually, I was laughing at the perception of Philadelphia fans.
Oh no, Greased Up Polls is back to Wendell, John. So.
I agree with Matt.
We need more women on this podcast.
I think we've scared them all off, and they're
Emma's shirt ring's so true.
I'm kidding.
But
it's important that I'm special.
It was actually an impressive finale for even if it should not have been. And also the other thing that probably takes under consideration. I mean, look at his competition. There's suddenly like a lot of Gavin fans out there that either were like silent this whole season because they just felt like they were going to get shouted down, or maybe perhaps didn't give a shit about him for the entire season, but now he is their one last best hope to rail against how unfair the show is. # Gavin was robbed.
Yeah,
Gavin was not very good at Survivor.
Hey, Andy, how dare you? Gavin had a great social game. He said it, therefore it must be true. Just like when Ryan and Chrissy said it about themselves in HHH. It must be true. If you say to the camera, I have a great social game, why would you ever lie? Why would you be an unreliable narrator? I mean, sure, you could say Gavin had 0 votes against him, so that's clearly evidence of him having a great social game, right? It definitely could not be that he was a fucking goat and everyone realized it and wanted him to come with them to the end. I mean, God forbid that someone suggests such a thing. I certainly would not. I
Not
assume.
only did nobody ever care to vote out Gavin, the winner of the season and the presumptive favorite of the season both were like, here, Gavin, I want you to move on to the next round because I fear you so fucking little.
Yes.
People are out there whining, oh, if only Gavin got an idol. Gavin fucking did get an idol. Rick. All right, Rick was like, you know what? I want Gavin to be immune because I could give a shit if he was still in this game. He is Gavin. He is nothing. I don't know when it happened that people forgot that people not getting voted out in the end game of Survivor isn't always because of their extreme skill at Survivor. A lot of times it's because why would we ever? And especially on a season like this, where as soon as somebody showed any level of threat to them, they were gone, except for Rick Devens. And even, of course, he was voted out once.
Right.
And I think the jury was very aware of that, too, because a lot of them were the threats that were gone. So,
yep.
Yeah. Oh, and getting back to the things Chris did and also the way that the internet complains, do we think the jury actually was saying Victoria was the biggest threat besides Rick?
Yeah,
or do we think Chris made that up?
That.
Is there? That's what I was wondering because of course I'm not
there is. If you, because
I believe it because she's awesome,
I watched the Ponderosas and stuff, and there are like other people. When she comes in, there's people saying like, "Oh, you were playing so well." I don't think she would have beat Rick. I do think she might have gotten some votes, though. I don't think it would have been 13-0 because there's a part in Rick's where Aubrey talks about how like, oh, I've heard a lot of complaints about Rick having advantages, and like obviously Aubrey's not looking at Twitter. That means that must be some of the people on the jury. So like not everyone was stoked on that, it sounds like. But no, from what I've seen, it does seem like that was a legitimate thing. Victoria was legitimately seen as a threat and seen as someone playing a great game. You hear that not just from Julia, who's her friend, but also like David, Wardog, and people like that.
Now, do you think he thought that Victoria was as big a threat as Chris? Because like that's the one thing Chris is saying. It was like, oh no, we got to get rid of somebody who's not me.
Right.
I can't believe that worked. I can't believe that worked.
Well, Chris didn't ask the jury, hey, how big a threat am I if I win the challenge, right?
Yeah, and he's not going to tell Lauren, like, yes, the biggest threat. Like, also the jury, when they're back, they're not talking about, like, they're not necessarily saying, oh, whoever goes back, they're like, they're probably talking about the game as it exists, the way we all were until that was all wiped away, So they're like, oh, right now, like Rick is really good, but Victoria's good in this different way, Yeah.
Also, they were choosing between Victoria, Gavin, Julie, Lauren, and absolutely, she would have been the biggest threat of that group. Just the one thing I was thinking is like another reason why Chris would say that is Victoria is the one smartest enough to not want to work with Chris,
which is also why she
why she would have to go, right?
Exactly.
No, I thought it was why she was considered a threat because she was smart.
I'm not bad mouthing her. I'm just like Chris could also be lying because his job in that scenario is to trick Lauren, and he did, and that's unbelievable. We have this later, but let's talk
things.
Yes, it can be. We have this later, but let's talk about this now. I think the second luckiest person besides Chris in this finale is Lauren, in that everybody is so upset about how the season broke down and like how insane the ending was that nobody's talking about her making one of the worst moves in the history of Survivor.
Yep.
It was up there.
She, I think, is aware of it too, from what I've seen. Like, I mean, she instantly, I think, knew how dumb that was.
Yeah, I mean, she mouthed to Kelly like, I didn't even need to play the idol. Really, she should have been mouthing to Kelly. Exactly. Really, she should have been mouthing to Kelly, I should have fucking held on to that idol because that would have been instant recognition of the actual mistake that she made.
Also, I shouldn't have, protected this guy, this other guy. Listen to Victoria, the smartest, biggest threat out there. The dangerous players are Rick and Chris. And guess what? Rick showed you he had an idol. I understand your wishful thinking of maybe it's fake because that's what you need to believe. But you know what? Maybe it's not. So vote for Rick and vote for Chris, and that's all you gotta do.
Yep.
Yeah, if there's because especially like, okay, you vote for Rick and Chris. If there's no votes, then vote for Victoria. Like
I guess at that point, whoever Rick voted for probably goes home.
True, and I mean, it didn't seem like he was going to be voting for Lauren in that instance.
it is like we should be talking about this like, Eric giving up immunity.
Yes.
That's what she did. At the end of the game, she gave something that would have protected her and got her through to the final four and said, no, I gotta do what this guy's telling me to do. And what this guy's telling me to do is make him immune. Like, if you're not suspicious of anything else, you should be like, hey, this guy really wants to be immune for some reason. Like, it's unfathomable. It's one of the dumbest things that's ever happened in Survivor, and nobody's talking about it because one of the other dumbest things that ever happened in Survivor was Chris winning it.
But yeah,
the other one is these fucking heads behind me.
No, that's not dumb. That's brilliant.
That's amazing. But yeah, no, I mean, and it was even due to like social manipulation, whereas some dumb moves are just, James not counting right and realizing that maybe he should play an idol, one of his two idols or something like that. Like, Chris put in work there,
Chris gave her the exact same cell that the women on Micronesia gave to Eric. They said, people won't respect you if you don't do this. That's what he was saying to her. He was saying, Kelly wants you to play this right so that you have that on your resume. And that got in her head. That's what she was like, you're right, I have to do that. I got to play this idol. I got to make a big move with it. She was in an amazing spot.
Yeah. And imagine, even if she did it, and obviously she ended up needing it at 5, but even if she didn't somehow, imagine being able to have been in the minority position that she was in and pull out that idol and been like, done what she did and be like, oh yeah, I've had this since day 2 and haven't needed to use it. But hey, it's the last time I can play it, so I might as well. Or, maybe she could play it on Gavin.
Everyone play the idols on Gavin.
The race. No, I'm saving him.
If you believe you need to make a big move, how on earth can you think, well, I gotta save the guy that's talking to me about it? Like, how is that your big move?
No,
I'm gonna save Chris.
It's insane.
And I think part of it is, and obviously this is impossible to know due to editing, right? Is I don't feel like the people who were in the game properly factored in what Edge of Extinction meant for this season. We never really saw a lot of people talking about what the ramifications for this would mean. They didn't even seem to talk as much about like Rick being a big threat because of this time on Edge of Extinction so much.
No,
as
they did. They did when he came back. They did.
Well, right. First thing they did, yes.
Yeah, and then Julie said, "Oh, it's unfair to get rid of him right away." But that's the first thing they said. They said, "Oh, he's going to have a big advantage because he was there."
Yeah, Julie, very concerned about fairness.
Rode that fairness all the way to number 3.
Yeah, let's make sure Chris gets to eat. I mean, you know what? That is a very kind thing to do because he has been suffering. But good Lord, that is not Survivor. I was finishing that sentence.
Oh, fair enough. I am sorry I interrupted.
Helping her with the puzzle. How dare you? Of course he deserves
That's true.
steak for that.
I mean, I do think that is part. Like, yeah, it was like, oh, well, he thought maybe she thought. I don't know. I guess if she also thought that Rick's idol was fake, it's like, well, Rick didn't win. He helped me do that. We can get rid of Rick, which they cared about more, and then maybe honestly, I don't know, man. I'm trying.
Yeah, and it's just like, yeah. But like even at first final 6, when they're all like, yeah, well, you're not going to have, it's just going to be you and Julie. Why would he use the idol to protect Julie? Then it's still just 2 against 3. And Rick had to remind them, no, 3 versus 3. Somebody else is coming back in. And it's just like, yeah. And maybe they did. Maybe they talked about it all the time and it never made the edit, right? It'd be weird that the show wouldn't include in the edit the people talking about the theme of the season and the way it would factor in, especially when it mattered. The entire end game was about it. But yeah, again, we don't know what we don't know. But clearly Lauren didn't make this move with the idea that, oh man, it's a huge threat of somebody who's spending all their time out there with the jury. And Gavin didn't seem to take it into big consideration when he was sitting there in front of the jury. He's like, you know what's bullshit? Spending all that time out on jury. Anybody who did that didn't really play Survivor. So it's just like, I feel like they didn't factor that in. And I know it's hard because, I mean, for the first part of the season, they didn't know what was happening. Yeah. And that's not the way they filter Survivor. But, Survivor's hard and you should probably filter in new information when you're making decisions.
Also, it's not like, he's, as much as we might be saying Chris was like Michelle, it's not like it's fluky, suddenly, a lot of the challenge beasts are gone, so now this person is winning them all at the end, which is something we see happen even with like Nick last season. It's like Chris is someone who's very obviously going to be good at physical challenges. You gotta assume, and you know, all the, she did live on the you know, on the beach with him the first few games, so she probably knows he can make fire. You know, so you gotta think that it's not going to be a hard path for him to get there.
Yeah, if I wanted to give her the most tepid of defenses, and this is seriously, like, don't even assume this is a defense. This is just throwing out information. Supposedly, and it was confirmed by more than one player, they were getting notes from players on Exile. And I know that Lauren received one from Kelly. It's possible that Chris knew that and was trying to exploit that as the reason, like, see, you know, Kelly gave you this note and she trusts me enough to tell me about this. Like there might have been more to that than we saw.
Yeah. I am really curious. Like it is, I mean, I guess there's just a lot going on, but it was weird to not, I think, reveal something like that, which is a pretty major dynamic shift. And also I'm just curious about like how that worked. Was it like things people scrawled for their friends and they agreed whoever wins will pass these notes? Or was it like, you know, when they give advantage, like it was a thing where it's like send a note to your
You know what I would have done if I were on Edge of Extinction? I would have specifically written a note to like one of the people that voted me out and it just have it say, fuck you.
We don't know that Reem wasn't.
I mean, yeah, that's all that was left was Lauren in that case, but she was kind of targeting Lauren, so it could work.
And again, we don't know that like they weren't getting these notes throughout, you know, just like every day Rick opens this thing from Reem, fuck you. It's like,
he's so great.
This is what's getting me through the game. This is what's getting me through the game. That every day I get a new letter from Reem that says "fuck you."
A new "fuck you" every morning is the breakfast of champions.
Yeah. And look, I don't even have a hard time believing that Kelly did pass that advice on. And honestly, one of the reasons why that would be because Lauren really wasn't doing much in this game. As much as we like to will it into existence that Gavin, Lauren, and Victoria were running the show, even though like for most of the show they clearly weren't. But you know, Survivor fans have really poor memories. Rick was the entire season, even though his edit really started after all those other players went home. You know, and they're running the show started after all those other players went home. The people that were there didn't seem to think Lauren was really killing it. And when she finally had a chance to, we saw what happened. So yeah, they probably were like, yeah, Kelly's probably like, nobody's talking about you. In part, you know, even if they're talking at all, that's three people. One person gets to win. If all of your moves are three people, you can't claim credit unless them other two people are gone. And as Gavin proved, that still probably ain't enough. So yeah, sure. I mean, probably those notes. Speaking of that jury, is it hard to believe that they chose a person who was voted out to win? As you know, some people on the internet are like, oh man, what horrible Survivor fans they all are. I can't believe they chose Chris.
No, and we've known this. We've known that. Like, that's why everyone, when the season theme was announced, people were like, oh, Joe's gonna win. And yeah, sure, that didn't quite happen, but it basically happened. It's just a new version with short hair, which is Joe. But and that's what, you know, we all knew Ozzy would win South Pacific if he had gotten to the end. Like, it's been well established that's part of the reason why fans don't like these kind of themes. It's not just, oh, someone getting voted out and getting back in is like the antithesis of how the game is supposed to work. But it's also, wow, that person has such an unfair advantage because they're not voting people out and they just get to hang out with the jury, whether it's consistently for a few weeks or in the Aussie, you know, Redemption Island thing, catching them a fish and then sending them on their way. Like, we've known this is a problem. It should, sure, it can, maybe it's like a little disappointing when it's someone you think of that you're familiar with, that you think of as being super strategic and stuff. But also, again, this has been addressed, but like Chris actually, I think with the parameters of the game he had, played very well, you know, did very well at the end. And look who he was up against. Not just with Gavin wasn't just quiet too. That's a part of it, is that Gavin had a quiet game. He also betrayed a lot of people. Victoria didn't vote for him because she was mad because she thought she felt like he betrayed her. And that is a factor in games all the time. We always say like, oh wow, they turned on their own. They probably won't get that jury vote. So he has that for Ron, Rick, maybe Eric. Julia to an extent. Oh, sorry, yeah, it's Eric, not Rick. To be fair, those names are very
Ron
similar.
and Eric, yeah.
Yeah, no, I never mind. But yeah, like Ron, Eric, Victoria, I guess, Aubrey,
Joe,
maybe Julia, who that was such a cluster, who the fuck knows. But that's already, I mean, there's 13 people, but that's already a decent portion. And then she's never met Reem. Yeah. Which again is why this whole concept is dumb. And really, yeah, the theme isn't on trial, but it wasn't for the show, but it should be for us now.
Yeah, no, Gavin had a great line for viewers. For that jury, it's a dumbass thing to say. And people like, the jury should have recognized that coming back in the game and win is bullshit. Then what the fuck were they doing there?
Why didn't they could have left. They had the choice to leave, and they didn't. So maybe think about that.
And like, I get it. I sympathize for him. That probably was very frustrating. But also, again, yeah, it was a surprise at the merge, but they knew someone was coming back now. So they should have been thinking about it. I think there are people, in this game who, I think part of the problem is, yeah, if Gavin had won, he would have been a lower tier winner. He would have been a Nick or an Adam type. And I think even, Victoria was my favorite. And I think maybe had played one of the, at least one of the better, if not the best game. It was still a very flawed game. There was not a perfect player this season. There's not a perfect player most seasons. Most people, winning or otherwise, have like major flaws in their game, and they either got lucky and got away with it or they didn't.
Yeah, and like you said, we discussed at multiple points in this season, before this season, having that time where you're essentially not playing the game, the discussions that you have with people don't feel like you're manipulating them in any way, because it feels like we're not playing the game right now. We are outside of the game. So you're not doing this because you're trying to get my vote. You're doing this because you're trying to form a relationship with me. And he got to do that with so many people. Basically, like I ran down the list before, all those people he had never met in the actual fucking game,
right?
But he got to hang out with them in this low stress environment. He's providing for them, like you mentioned Ozzy did before. Like, he's following all the steps that a Redemption Island winner we had previously assumed would follow if that person was going to win. And it worked. We were right.
But Morris is like, I don't understand why people are expecting the jury to invalidate their own experience. Right. They were Chris. They viewed that if I stay in this, part of the game, which isn't fun, by the way, they were suffering out there. So for a pissant like Gavin to assume that they had it easy really turned them off. But that they were doing that, and then they thought, if I suffer like this, maybe I can get back and win. So they would never say, oh, well, Chris didn't deserve it because he did what I did. They would think that he deserves it more because he did what I did. And for people to assume that they would invalidate what he did is like assuming that a legacy, acceptance to a fancy university would look down upon other legacies. That is not the way humans work. They had that experience. They felt it legitimate. So that was never going to be a strike against him. And then as for Gavin, I mean, he had to argue against Chris, but he also had to argue against other people he played with. You can't just be like, well, I was here, so that's my case for victory. What was your case if you had gone up against Lauren or Victoria? Right. Or, forget even the Rick and Chris about it. Why were you the best of the people who survived this experience? And answer has to be because it has to be better than because I'm not Julie. It has to be more than that.
Yeah, it's not a final two, man.
Yeah. And so I don't think Gavin had a good reason to argue other than, hey, I was never voted out, and that's not a good argument to a bunch of people who don't give a shit about that.
Gavin, sorry, go ahead, John.
I want to point out that Chris did say to Gavin, well, did you get 0 votes against you because you're a great player or because you're a goat? He was hanging a lantern on it. I mean,
which actually was the moment they were the most upset. The jury seemed to really not although a lot of that was Kelly and Lauren had said stuff and they voted for Gavin. So who knows if the whole jury felt that way.
Well, I don't think the jury likes the direct attacks on people.
Yeah.
They like when you answer their questions with an indirect attack on that person.
Right.
Hey, whoa, buddy! This isn't about you. This is about me. I've been waiting for a while to make this about me. Don't go there. Also, if anybody wants to celebrate Kelly, it's like, hey, she was the one person who saw past this, voted for Gavin, maybe. Or do you think she was still bitter at Chris for trying to take her out way back when?
Which again was really more David and Rick, but whatever. I mean, it's not something we saw, but we like in the edit much, but there were a couple times where it was like Gavin said that he was, he was upset with War Dog because he was really close to Kelly and stuff like that. So I guess somehow in like 6 days they had a good bond. So that's why a lot of people vote for people. Sometimes it's just who they like better.
We literally had somebody say, I can't believe the jury voted for the person they liked better. In 2019, season 38 Survivor, people were like mentioning that.
How many seasons has that not happened?
Yeah. Kageyan, maybe?
Yeah. I just want to applaud Emily for that perfectly amazing monotone Gavin impression she did. Bravo. Nailed it.
So
it could have had a little more Southern, but I wasn't prepared.
It's okay. You got the tone.
So let's talk about one of our favorite things to talk about. Edit.
Ooh. I thought we were going to go confessionals. I was so excited.
I mean, they're hand in hand.
That's part of the edit, man. Sure.
Obviously, a lot of people complained about the edit of this season because it was a season of Survivor, and that's what people do. But now, one of the things that we always push back against, and I think it gets framed incorrectly that we think the editors could never fail. And part of that is because of the way John argues, but part of that is just, that our point generally is it's hard to argue about how bad an edit is until you've seen the end. And we've had seasons before where we were like, hey, maybe that hope that you're having that these people were doing something is untrue. Maybe they were never doing anything, and that's why the edit went there. Exactly. So now we've seen this season, and I guess the question is it possible to edit together a good story about a contest whose winner is absent the entire time?
I saw an amazing stat from, I wrote it down, Rob's Fact Checker on Twitter. Shout out to you. He said everyone this season had at least 10 confessionals. Everyone on this season. The last time that everyone on a season even got 7 confessionals was worlds apart. And yet still, we got complaints about the unbalanced edit. Like, we saw more of the people in confessionals in this game, and I know confessionals are the most valid stat you can possibly point to. So
you said so many times, John.
It's a truism. If we've seen the people in this cast that many times throughout the season, the edit must be relatively balanced, right? Like,
absolutely.
Really? Are we going to complain about the balance of the edit just because Rick got more? It's like, Rick's the highest scorer, but the ball's still getting distributed around.
It's also weird. I mean, I don't care to actually look at the stats on this, but this is the only time there's been like sort of a superstar like person who's getting a lot more screen time, and that it's not the way. Like, some people are like, wait, if Rick didn't win, then why did he get so many confessionals? I mean, let's look back at how many confessionals Penner has gotten in his seasons and how far does he make it?
Exactly.
I remember a Survivor contestant back in the day, and he might have faded into the background for some of you, but he got a lot of confessionals and he didn't win, and his name was Russell Hantz.
I will say, people are going to always point at that as this crazy outlier, and they were trying to promote heroes versus villains and yada yada.
They're also going to probably be like, yeah, and I fucking hated it. So
I know they did. Guess what though? Like, it's the reason why some people get more confessionals than others is because they're where the action is. They are what everyone is talking about. What they are doing matters more because guess what? Because what they do has more direct effect on each vote when they are getting those confessionals. Rick was basically even until he started his immunity run and everyone started targeting him. And the reason why he wasn't getting an outsized confessional before then is because he wasn't really doing anything before then. And then when he started doing a lot and everyone started paying attention to him, then guess what? The camera had to follow him because they had to know what he was doing, what he was thinking, because everyone wanted to get him out. And what he was doing was the story of the island for pretty much the entire rest of the season until someone else won.
Yeah. No, look, and I like how people like use the confessional accounts, like, oh my God, Rick has so many more than everybody. And then I finally looked at them, like, I don't, because I don't care. And, you know, I'm on the John train. It's like, it's a thing, but it's not the only thing. Some people just aren't as good at talking in confessionals than the professional television personality might be. But then I looked at it and I was like, oh, look at that. Rick has a lot of confessionals in the episode he's doing stuff. And in the episodes he wasn't doing stuff, he was about average. There was even some with 0. And yeah, so I think what ended up happening, because like people weren't even complaining that hard this was the Rick Devens season until War Dog went out. What happened was the plot stalled. The entire plot of this season was as soon as somebody is a big threat target, they're taken out. And everybody gears up for that. And then they move on. And it didn't happen. Rick was the one who stopped that from happening. And suddenly, so then that's what everything stuck. It froze, not just for the show, but for the people on the show. So yeah, Rick was out there doing everything. He was winning immunities. He was finding idols. He was, you know, playing idols. Everybody's like worried about him with the idols. They were talking about him, but also the other people weren't forming a plan B because they shouldn't have. Rick was the plan. Any other plan but get rid of Rick would have been a stupid plan. And then once they realized they couldn't get rid of Rick, or we potentially might not be able to get rid of Rick because he might have an idol. He's proven he's gotten them before. We've seen him out searching. Then they came up with plan Bs. And we saw them come up with plan Bs. It wasn't this hidden thing. But to come up, like, to show, waste the screen time of, okay, well, once we're done with Rick, this is what we're going to do, would be a waste of time because that never happened. Yep. They never got rid of Rick. You know who got rid of Rick? The guy who wasn't on the fucking show. That's why it stalled out and why it became the Rick Devens show, because it literally was the Rick Devens show. They, you know, they wanted to get rid of this person, they got rid of this person. They wanted to get rid of that person, they got rid of that person. The one person they couldn't, so then they kept talking about it, and it kept becoming this thing that kept rolling over, which, by the way, it was like 3 episodes. Everybody's talking about this season, like this whole thing. It was 3 episodes. And in fact, probably 3 episodes prior to that, you guys were talking about how you, well, maybe 4 or 5, that like Rick was one of your favorites. Like, people have such bad memories. Everything.
There were some people who didn't like him in the beginning, although I didn't really get why. I think some.
Well, he had a shtick, and the thing is, there are
some
always
people don't like shtick.
Yeah, there's always people that aren't going to like shtick. But here's the other thing about shtick: shtick is going to get you on camera. Mm-hmm. You know, Rick's, you know, like a reporter thing that some people dislike, some people like. That is always going to get you on camera. Are you kidding me? Survivor. They love that.
If you don't believe it, look at every fucking Rupert season. Pearl Island, I'm a pirate. Heroes versus villain, I'm a fucking hero. Blood versus water, I'm married to my blood.
And again, this is where people will go, yeah, and I fucking hate it. And this is the part where I go back to what I said a few weeks ago. I think you hate Survivor. This is what this show is and always has been. People keep talking about this mythical time where Survivor was this perfectly balanced competition that favored women, and like, you know, everybody, you know, it was all about this. No, Survivor is a CBS show produced by Mark Burnett that, you know, has always been that. And I think maybe part of the problem that, you know, people struggle with is like maybe Survivor's the only like non-prestige show they watch. Maybe they don't realize that what they're doing is watching a middle-brow show trying to reach a wide swath of people so that they can sell time to advertisers, and they just don't know how to let go.
See, I would say that, and yet we saw 2 relatively prominent TV critics who were like, yeah, Rick Devens, go Rick.
That's true. We did.
Well, it's the same with us. I mean, maybe we weren't cheering as much, although I'm going to get into that a bit. But we like it when things happen on a television show that we watch and talk about. I know that the notes that you don't hear are the great ones. But CBS has never cared about that. There's never been a season that was edited towards your under the radar faves. That's why they're called under the radar in the first fucking place.
Well, can I just say this? Actually, this conversation actually explains a lot about why there are certain, you know, some people who really like the overseas Survivor, or like Survivor what is
University.
it? Like Maryland? Yeah. Because like those give them that different experience, because they're not aimed at the same people. Those are aimed at like the hardest of the hardcore fans, because guess what? The casual fans don't even know those things exist. Like Survivor doesn't survive.
I would presume that for Maryland, sure, but I would presume that Survivor Australia is aimed at the people of Australia.
No,
Survivor
that's
New Zealand.
not true. No.
Perhaps aimed at the people of New Zealand, and dare I say that Survivor South Africa is aimed at the people of South Africa.
If those survivors were aimed at the people from their own countries, why are they in English?
Oh,
that's a joke, guys. That's a joke.
I haven't watched South Africa. It might be in Afrikaans or however you say that language. I've never tried to say that out loud.
I think you got it right.
Yeah,
there's 2 A's. I don't know what to do with that.
No, I think you did good. Good work.
Thanks.
But
your innate whiteness helped.
But Andy's point is right. Survivor does not survive as a TV show by being pitched to its hardest of hardcore fans only. It has to reach a lot of different people. And yes, those fans are an important part, but there's a lot of people who have probably never said word one about Survivor on the internet or anywhere else besides like in their living room to whoever they're watching with, who watch this show. And, this is still winning its time slot because of those people.
Yep, my mom loves Rick Devens. I will say though, even my mom was like, when Chris won, she was like, "Well, at least he's the cutest." like even so, I think, and this is good for us for not wanting Edge of Extinction. But I think even the casuals were like not stoked on that. So
yeah, I really do think sincerely that this is probably the last time they try this. Which is
weird because it's like it upset fans, but it's also I feel like it has to have been what the show wanted. Like I guess they wanted there to be fewer people on the edge of extinction.
Right. Well, just like the people who wanted Rick Devens to lose got their monkey paw wish, I think the show also got its monkey paw wish, where they wanted the person to come back from the edge and win, and then they realized when it happened, like, oh wait, this is awful. This is terrible.
Now we have to edit this season, and it's a guy that was there for 9 fucking days and then was gone.
We had no time to spotlight, and he took out one of the most dynamic players we've had in years.
And oh man! And so for the people who read everything into what Probst says, just imagine, it's like not even Probst was talking this one up before the season began.
Yeah, and
it's like with Cook Island, they're like, oh yeah, Survivor Race Wars. They're like, well, it'll diversify our casting, and then the mutiny happens, and they're like, oh god, we cannot have like a majority of white people.
Chose each other.
Final 3, and we'll try Final 3.
They're now taking out the minorities on their tribe. Can we just do it twice in one night so it can be over?
The other thing, like, I think the hint that this is done now, again, with an exception that maybe they would try this in an all-winter season, if that were ever a thing they were going to do. I don't know. Maybe
why would they do that? Yeah,
exactly.
Crazy.
So the hint that this will not be coming back is that Pro specifically referred to it as an experiment at the reunion/finale thing. You only do that if you're like, okay, guys, just we tried something new here. We recognize that it failed. We won't do this again.
He wasn't calling the fire-making twist an experiment when Ben won.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we'll quickly go back to the monkey paw wish of Rick Devens losing. Shout out to everybody who still celebrated that moment. You guys are the real ones. You're like, I don't care. It's no longer about any kind of foundational belief. I just can't stand that corny ass motherfucker, and I'm glad he lost. So honestly, that I could almost support.
I agree.
It can't be about the Edge of Extinction. It can't be because he's a white male. It was only about like, fuck it, I needed to see him lose, and if this is the way it had to go down, I'm going down with it.
Yeah, even if I don't quite get, if it's just that, like, oh, there's greats on you, because, like, there are people who, personality's great on anyone, but, like, if you're just, like, straight up, didn't enjoy him, not, like, think he's evil for certain things, but, like, just, like, didn't enjoy it, that's fine, you wanted to lose, but, like, the people are like, he can't, I swear to God, this is not strawman. I saw people on Twitter who were like, how, like, Rick should not win because he was voted out, who were also like, God, I hope Reem wins.
Exactly.
No, I guess one thing for them is like,
that's just what I
want to
can't
watch
do.
the world burn.
Right here, that was my motivation. That's why I enjoyed the finale, because at that point I was like, oh yeah, just give me the stupidest ending possible. Which
I kind of felt that way too.
The entire finale was like the stupidest stuff that was ever happening, because we haven't even gotten into Rick's fake idols yet.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Oh my God. Talk about the trolliest moment on this season. And that's a season where someone came back into the game at Final 6 and won the game.
Can I ask something? Because I had asked this in a reply to Fishback on Twitter, and of all the people who are upset about this, nobody actually responded to me, so I don't remember. Angelina's idol. Angelina's fake idol was after she found it, right? Like she found her idol and then hid the fake one?
I think so.
Yeah, yes. I believe so.
Okay. Because a lot of people were making that comparison. Oh, that was evil. Oh, but Rick's is seen as good, right? And to me, that does make a difference, because as much as we have talked about, like, it not, like, Rick, I feel like, is what David did. It's not what Angelina did.
So the difference here, if you want to get deep into it, is that Angelina sold way past the close. Like, not only did she do the fake idol thing, she was like, oh my God, Mike, did you see that? She found the idol. Oh my God, we're doomed. And it was just like, okay, I get it. You're punking me. This is enough.
I mean, Angelina also got sold at the tribal itself, which Lauren and Julie really didn't do to Rick.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. There are people like, and actually, I think he said this in some exit interviews, but I like briefly spoke to Rick, or more was standing near while someone else spoke to Rick at the after party, and he was kind of hanging a lantern on. He's like, oh, when Ron has a fake advantage, it's evil, but when Rick does it, it's fun. Like, he was saying that, so I think he recognizes that. But I think part of it is. He has said, and he said this in Ponderosa too, so I don't think it's just after the fact, that with Ron, that was the whole problem, is we knew, he didn't even vote for Ron, right? He didn't think Ron was going home. Is that he thought this was going to be the start of, the battle of Ron and Rick, sort of like a David and Zeke thing. So he was, playing up for that, and then he was like, I felt so bad after, because I didn't think he was going home, and I just, dogged on him. But, that also, I think, but I guess it's because, I guess Julie could have. Julie should have just been like, oh, you wanted to make me look like an idiot in front of my kids? It's not his fault that they didn't call him out, It's the same thing about them talking him up at the previous tribals. Sure, Lauren's not going to do it because she actually got voted out, so she's pulling the J move of you got me, But Julie was still there. I feel like they should be trying to make him look bad in front of the jury.
Well, and if anything, they were trying to do the opposite for this entire game. They were pumping him up in front of the jury.
Exactly, and so I think that's why, and with the winners and Chris winning, it's there were some good moves happening, but these people just didn't have it, man.
This was a season where the top dogs were taken out early, and
they did not have the killer instinct.
And it's also possible that Julie didn't specifically know that the fake idol came from Rick, because if she did, it would have been fantastic troll game to then flip that script right back on Rick.
Honestly, that would have been so good. That would have been so funny. I wish that would happen.
Beloved by the internet then.
Yeah. I'll say, if she doesn't know this from Rick, that doesn't say anything good about her.
That's also true. Yeah. Who else is getting those idol the parchment.
Right. Yeah. And I think, just sort of as another note, and I'm not even a giant Rick fan. I think he's fine, but just sort of in the whole moral comparison, because I definitely do think there are times that women are treated differently in Survivor. I just would prefer we compare it to actual, things that match. Because I do think, that was a different thing with Angelina and Allison. But I guess he said in an exit interview, I think, that once he found the idol, he told Chris, that they came back from uni, he's like, get rid of the fake ones. We don't, because the purpose was to distract, right, to make them not find the real idol, such as David with Jay. And so he's like, well, I have the real idol, so it's fine. But that it was already they were going to do, and I think that's why he sees Lauren find it because
he's coming out like
He's going to get it.
like, oh well.
And then he's laughing because it's just kind of funny at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny.
No, I think that's the entire point. He's doing it to try to get that, the big strategic advantage of fake idols. If they find this, they won't keep looking. Let's put a pin in that for a second. I have some thoughts. Whereas Angelina, there was no fake idol to find. She was just doing it to mess with somebody. Where it gets a little different with Ron is that, where it feels like for Rick is like, I was already going, where you're just messing with me. But to be fair to Ron, that is what Ron was trying to do. Now, also, we discussed it at the time. Rick was playing to the jury and trying to make people he was competing with look bad. He's under no obligation to tell the truth. But there's also, if you want to say there's some hypocrisy, yeah, there is. So, yeah, okay. But yeah.
I just wish that the other players had also tried to do stuff in front of the jury.
I know.
So now let's talk about fake idols from my perspective. All right, first off, so everybody's like, hey, Rick is doing this. This is it. Yeah, it sure thought people were looking for idols now, didn't it? I mean, Rick found an idol. All of them knew he found an idol, and they kept looking because they're like, well, there might be another one. Then Julie finds an idol. Everybody finds an idol, and then Lauren keeps looking because it's like, I don't believe it. These could be fake. So, no, it doesn't stop anybody. We have proof. Rick found an idol after being given a fake idol because he kept looking. People kept looking, so stop it. The only thing they're good for is trolling people, and I found it hilarious this episode. It was my favorite part of the episode was watching Rick react to people finding his fake idol. Trolling people is good. Strategy is stupid.
Strategy. Nailed it.
Yeah, that's all I got. Oh, what do we think of him saving Gavin? That was fun, right? I think we already kind of.
I think that goes hand in hand with the troll move of the fake idols. You're basically saying to the jury, "This guy concerns me so little. I'm going to save him."
Exactly. Yeah. It really, I thought, was a nice little signal to the jury that, if you don't respect this guy very much, I get it. It's because I don't either.
Yeah, it's basically the taking, now when you take someone with you to the final three and don't send them to make fire.
Yeah, and I mean, Chris sort of did it again when Gavin's like, I want that shot. I'm going to take Rick down. And Chris
back that Gavin.
Let me stop you.
No,
I don't trust you to be able to do it. So
Exactly.
I do love, though, that Chris let both of them say, yes, I want to do this. I absolutely want to do this. I want to do this. And then he goes, you know what? I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll give Gavin this. At least he wasn't the one that Chris handed the immunity necklace to.
And then Probst didn't even ask her who she's taking with her. He's just like, okay, what you doing? This is our fire. So.
Yeah, that did seem a little weird to me, but I guess, I don't know. It's just because he had it. It's a weird situation.
And it's one of those things when it happens live, Probst is like, okay, that's what he's doing. And once he happened, it's great. But if Julie would have been like, hey, don't I get to pick? Probst would have been like, oh, yeah, I guess you do. You're the immunity holder now. Who are you going to vote for? But, I mean, she would have been like, I'm going to get Gavin.
Yeah, I mean, she needed both those people to be gone. And, you're not going to try to save one of them unless she thinks, actually, I'm not worried about Chris in the final three, so I think I'm going to take him. And maybe that bravado would do something, but they'd probably just think she was stupid.
Yeah. Let's talk about Rick. The hot topic, hot button political issue of the season. What do you guys think of him as a player, personality, whatever? What did you think of Rick this season?
Who wants to go first here?
I was going to say, you should really say someone's name because I don't know if you noticed, but there's a lot of us here. It's like the Edge of Extinction.
Never wait for an invitation. I don't know why you guys would.
I'm only allowed to speak when spoken to.
That's clearly not true. The confessional counts of this episode will prove that you have not had trouble finding time to talk.
Oh, man.
Let's see. Whose opinion other than my own do I care about on this? You know what? Maybe I can start.
Hey. Who? I mean, come on now, man. Give some other respect there. It's like I co-host a second podcast with you. You should respect me to keep me around there.
What did you think of Rick?
I like Rick. I actually still like Rick as a personality, as a player. He tried hard, which is something that Modern Survivor really cares about. That you try hard, you find your idols, you compete, whatever. I mean, his social game was pretty much hamstrung from the moment he got back. He was still able to do a couple things for a couple votes. He worked with someone who apparently hated his guts in War Dog. Or actually, no, War Dog hated David's guts. Wait, which one was it? One of those came out.
All coherently put together before you start talking.
No, I'm not going to do that. That's something that John would do, not something that Matt would do. But no, I mean, as a player, yeah, he had his flaws, but I think a lot of those were also imposed by the structure of this game, which made him a target.
Yeah, I think he was perfectly acceptable as a player. He did stuff, and as we were saying earlier, like, you know, it's an entertainment show. If you want to be on TV, fucking do something. He did things. He definitely, you know, as we got deep into the game, he had more personality than most of the people that were left. So that's fine. I don't think I would have really enjoyed this season more if I had to have more Gavin at the very end of it. So I'm glad Rick was around.
Yep.
At the same time, like, if he doesn't come back for any kind of all-star season, I'm fine. I could be good without more Rick in my life. I got a lot of him this season.
Yeah, good luck on that one. It's happening. And Emma, what are your thoughts?
Roughly the same as John, I would say. Like, I liked him in the beginning. Like, I remember being kind of bummed when he got voted out. I think eventually the I can't do the newscaster noise. Got a little old just because it like happened so much, but that didn't even really start happening until the last couple episodes. Like when it was in Tribal, I didn't mind it. But it was like just the confessional, just, you know, and same with if you're doing the same joke over and over, it's just not that funny. But I did think
I could never visit a website that does the same joke over and over.
I was thinking the same thing of all the people that throw that fucking stone.
To be fair to Emma, I don't believe these are her ideas that we should keep driving into the ground.
That's true.
Yeah.
She might be tolerating it more than she's propagating it.
I don't know. I think she was also on board with the Joe picture, but I could be wrong about that.
Yeah, but I do think there is a difference with like a short visual bit and like starting everything you say with like a 5-second noise.
A preamble.
Yeah.
That would be like doing like every podcast trying to come up with like new nicknames for one dude. Like that. Come on, the joke is old.
Ridiculous.
That was something I only did because you guys were doing. I thought that was kind of dumb. I always think.
See, that's what I'm saying. I think she's being true to herself. She does not like our sense of humor either. Again, it's like, yeah, everybody's like, oh, the dad joke Rick. And I'm like, come on.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right, so
I wasn't actually done speaking.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, I thought he was fine enough. I think he had some funny moments. It doesn't really bother me that he found idols. You know, I get it when it's like not someone you like find super interesting, finding idols being boring, but I don't think like that makes you bad. I think you got to do what you got to do if you're getting targeted. Especially because he both won idols and won immunities, so it wasn't really like the same thing over and over and over again.
Right.
Maybe there's like mild bits of hypocrisy in some spots, but I think most players, you know, end up doing something that you kind of don't agree with at one point or another. You know, like Parvati definitely, you know, who I love, has like definitely had like her not so nice moments, you know, so I don't.
Yeah.
Calling Jerry
I'm a Tyson fan, so you know.
What?
I said I'm a Tyson fan, so you know.
Yeah, like I really disliked Tyson his first season. But yeah, I liked him fine. He wasn't my favorite player, but he was definitely not my least favorite player.
So I'm done with the measured responses, which I've been trying to, because just the reaction just blew my mind. Because even like, I never would fault people for not liking somebody. You know, people have their taste or whatever, but the degree to the hate just made no sense. It made no sense for somebody who he was not as hateful as so many other contestants that we've seen on this show. I really liked Rick Devens. I think he was the most interesting character this season by a wide margin. I also think he was the best player of the season by a wide margin. And part of that is because I feel like this was a season where if you were a threat, you got taken out. And he wasn't. And this is the rant that I want to go on. And I think Matt has been right around this rant himself. I'm tired of Survivor fans acting like if you are targeted in Survivor, you are bad at Survivor. And if you aren't targeted at Survivor, you are good at Survivor. I'm not sure when this came about, because we used to know the opposite. We used to know that being good at Survivor made you a threat, and being able to somehow escape that threat level is impressive. And being a goat and thus not being a target makes you not good at Survivor. But now it's like, oh, he wanted to, he doesn't even count anything he's doing. Why doesn't he just get the fuck out the set? They want him gone, so he isn't. He's no good. He's not controlling votes. Yeah, of course he's not controlling votes. They want to vote for him. How can he control the vote for himself? They're like, he doesn't know where the votes are going. I'm pretty sure he's aware that the votes are going for him. All right. In fact, I know that because he played 2 idols successfully, and only 2 for everybody who wants to be like he's basically Ben.
But he had one of them handed to him, which is super unfair. And
that one he didn't play successfully,
and
that one was played for David. So thank you.
I'm setting him up, Andy. You knock him down.
Yeah, look. And this happened with Mike, too. Mike has a terrible social game because he's not letting them vote it out. This is what happens in Survivor. Once people decide that they want to vote you out, usually you are voted out. I find it impressive when you're not, especially since it barely ever happens.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm at. And it's like, could people have played a better game than him? Sure. But they didn't because they never got him out. Right. And failing to get him out means that they're not in control of the game. Everybody's like, these 3, and for one, 3 makes it a bit of a problem. Saying those 3 were control of the game, except for the fact that they couldn't get Rick Devens out, is like saying Hans Gruber was in control of the heist, except for John McClane. It can't be both. If you aren't getting out the number 1 target, the person that will beat all of you in the game, then you ain't controlling shit. I'm not impressed that you got your second choices 4 votes in a row, especially when some of those second choices were you. Right. Laura, Victoria, Lauren. So, yes, I think he was the best player this season in large part because anybody who could have been better was gone long before him.
Right. Now, let me say this. I think one of the problems here is that people hold winners and games to an impossibly high standard. Because I think actually that most of us here would agree that the most impressive Survivor games are the ones where you are the obvious front runner, and yet you can Jedi mind trick everyone into not just voting with you, but to never considering you a threat. And we've seen this happen, and when I consider, like, most of us would agree, because that's what Kim did. That's what Tony basically did. That's what Boston Rob did. Mr. John himself right there. That's what one of the most vile players who played one of the best games, Brian Heidick, basically did. Where, these people are in control of the game such that while everyone knows they are in control, no one is targeting them. And so, but that's a very rare thing. That is
also, even Kim won out at the end.
Right, yeah. Well, and she won out because, and most of those people had to win out because they would have been vulnerable at 4 because guess what? Everyone was fine working with them until the last moment, which modern Survivor has realized you can't wait till the last moment to take people out. That's the big innovation, right? So, but when we judge the game against the very, very, very best wins, when we're judging, it's like, if this person is not at a Kim Spradlin level game, then they're not any good. That's a ridiculous standard. That's like saying if someone isn't Willie Mays, they're a crappy baseball player. Guess what? There ain't many Willie Mayses out there.
No, there are not.
Willie Mays was a very good baseball player for those who don't follow sports.
Yes.
Or are like 100.
Yes.
I was going to say Barry Bonds, but there are people who have different problems with him.
That's controversial, even though a lot of other people were on steroids and none of them hit 700.
You want me to say LeBron James? You want me to say LeBron James? That's like saying that, if you're not LeBron James, you're a shitty basketball player.
Yeah, so it's like, do I think if Rick had won in the pack, if his fire had gone a few inches higher, would he have been one of the great winners of all time? No, but this was what the season was. You were a target, you got taken out. And I want to, jump ahead for a second. That includes your beloved Victoria. The instant anyone suggested that she was a threat, she was fucking gone. She didn't survive a single vote as a target.
I think they had to do a dumb. Well, I guess, he didn't have the thing, but it involved people having idols. I agree in terms of, they should have been looking for idols. I agree that I think Victoria had good moments, but I think particularly the Aurora vote, you could argue others before, but she talked about how it just, I felt like I had to pick my battles. It was the final 6-ish. That is when you pick your battles. I think you just waited too long. got too complacent because of the Rick Devens of it all. I would quibble a little bit of like they're worse because they couldn't get him out because it's like when it's idols, sure, because they should be looking for idols, they should be figuring it out. Not everyone. If he wins immunity, what are you going to do? Like, yes,
win immunity. That's what you need to do. They were competitors in the exact same challenges as he was. And I'm tired of people belittling something that's been in the show since the goddamn beginning of it. Winning immunity never matters until it does. And they had chances to beat him by getting him out, but they didn't. So they weren't as good at the full thing of Survivor.
You do it every time.
So, as I was saying, there's not much you can do besides win immunity yourself. Not everyone, not every challenge is always going to be suited for every person. It is part of the game, obviously, to win. So I don't think you're a bad player for winning immunity, but I also don't think you're a bad player if you don't. Look at, Sandra or something. Obviously, you still have to skirt the vote other ways, but like this is also such a weird season. Like Victoria became a target because someone who came into the game at the final 6 and had been hanging out with the jury was like, by the way, Victoria's a threat, you should play your idol on me.
Yeah, I mean, to me it felt like a bargain bin version of Millennials versus Gen X, where just the threats and the entertaining players just got chopped down one by one until all you were left with was the Adams of the world, although in this case it was a much more handsome Adam.
So I don't even think that. I think I don't like Gavin was Adam. This just had a weird game. This just had such a weird game mechanic that you don't quite get that one-to-one comparison. It would be like if Ken was more personable and had disappeared for a while, fed everyone, and then came back.
Ken's never going to win anyway. It didn't matter.
No, but he's also handsome. So.
That's true.
Another way you could have beaten Rick Devens at immunity challenges, not structure your entire game of that all we're going to do is vote out people who could beat Rick Devens at an immunity challenge. That's another way.
Like
if you're somebody who isn't going to...
Or Ron, you're right. That was a big mistake voting out Ron and Wardog.
Challenge champion
Aurora. Keep Aurora though.
I agree. I said the Aurora thing was like a huge mistake.
Keep Joe around and get rid of the other less members, and then get rid of them. And that's the thing. Like everybody's like, and this isn't even about Rick anymore. It's about people complaining about people who win challenges to win Survivor. And it's like, I'm sorry that sometimes your unathletic nerds don't win. Sometimes they do. Guess what? Survivor winners are different all the time.
Also, sometimes apparently unathletic nerds win the challenges.
Yep.
Yeah, you know who? Rick Devens. So
that
that's the
was
other thing. There's like
my point,
this big whining going on that Survivor's become this game that women can't win, except that like women have been winning a whole ton of challenges lately. That's like, I don't know that
they haven't been winning a whole lot of Survivor games lately, and you can't like say that's not true.
Absolutely, 100% it's not true. Or sorry, it's true.
You want to show that up?
Let's argue it.
Yeah.
Yes, of course we're winning. But it's not necessarily because it's become more masculine. Women win challenges now. Women even find idols now.
Of challenges. But I mean, it is definitely a trend we've noticed lately. And even the game that was much more survival based was way more even in terms of females winning.
Yeah.
Female winners, I should say.
So why do we think women aren't winning?
Idols.
I mean,
I think it's idols.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. I'm gonna jump on Matt's point here. Idols.
Yeah.
There were 4 people that found idols this season.
Yep.
How many of them were men? How many of them were women?
In this season, it was much more even than it's been in any time.
But just because it's this season doesn't mean the past many other seasons haven't.
No. I'm not arguing your point about other seasons. Yeah. I'm saying we're getting there. Like women are idols. We got 3 women this season that found idols on their own. Yep. 1 man did. Rick. He was the only one. Chris got handed one. He didn't find it.
Right.
So there's starting to be a more even distribution. Like Angelina hanging a spotlight on it was a good thing.
It was.
I don't know if they knew about it.
They didn't even know about the spotlight yet. So imagine now that they know. I think
we all praise Angelina. We all know that, right?
I do think with this season was just such a fluke and such like an experiment. I wouldn't worry too much about what this season says about it. But I do think we can look back at and I don't even mean like the past few, because if you look at the full like stats, if you look at 1 through 20 versus 20 through now, like it is way different.
Yeah, well, and so, but let me kind of give the full reason why I think the big difference is idols, because there's a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary effect to finding and playing an idol that goes into the calculus of being a winner. The primary effect is it's impressive to find an idol. The secondary effect is it's impressive to save yourself by playing an idol. The tertiary effect is it makes it look like you're doing something. Mm-hmm. And this is a game where, everyone talks about big moves. And it's not just probes. The people on the island are like, you have to make a move. Finding an idol's making a move.
Of probes, but it happens.
Yes, exactly. That's
sure. I mean, I'm not saying, but I'm just saying he's not the only one. The people in the game believe this too. And if you find an idol, you make a move. If you play an idol, you made a big move, And so this is a hallmark of recent winners. And so until this season, it's also been something that has been wildly out of proportion about who finds idols. And we know that because of Queen Angelina, who gave those numbers last season and who was telling everyone. So yes, I hope people listen to her. And
blessed be her name.
Blessed be her name. Mother of Dragons. No.
Wait, we don't like her anymore.
I don't know. I still think it's a pretty good comparison. But no, I mean, and that's the point. If people take this to heart and that changes, I think the winners will change too. But if it doesn't, it's just I think that's one of the biggest drivers between this discrepancy right now.
And I do think there's something to Survivor now is a game you need to do things to win.
Yeah.
And not always, because go wrong happen. But yeah, and it's there. And like what I think about it is that people are longing for a past that is long gone, and also just I think it's we're going to talk about this, the fetishization of the social game is that the social game is dead, which I can't stand. No, look,
we should just talk about that right now, honestly.
Yeah, but it's kind of tied into the idol thing. Is that I only view the social game as doing this thing. And as soon as somebody does this other thing, now it's no longer what I recognize as. I've seen things. It's no longer feminine, but it's like, and again, women have been barred. Let's see if it continues. But maybe also like women can find idols. Women can win challenges. Women can scale 45-foot cliffs to get idols. Women can do anything. But yeah, it's just like, is the social game dead? It's such a weird question to say one season after Nick won, who, had so much social game and different like alliances with people that he fucking named them all. It's a weird thing to say after Wendell beat Dominic in a final. It's a weird thing to say after Sarah beat Brad Culpepper in a final, but I guess we should say it. Is the social game dead? I miss the days that Survivor used to be about the social game and it was the only game that mattered.
I mean, you kind of touched on it, but like the social game has the most mobile fucking goalposts ever. Like it's just, how do you define the social game? Because when you do that, someone else defines it completely differently. Yep. It's like, Michelle won and must have the greatest social game ever. If you ask someone, okay, well, give me some evidence. Generally, there's silence in response to that. Not a whole lot of bullet points coming out of that one. But like they can say, well, Ben won and he didn't have any social game. He just had idols. Yeah, Chrissy had a fucking great social game. She said she was robbed.
Hey, John, you got to be careful speaking against Chrissy. She's the internet's favorite. You're going to have a lot of people coming after you.
It's just.
Can I say something about Koran really quick?
Absolutely.
So not only I feel like at the time when people are trying to figure out, I think a lot of it was people trying to figure out why Aubrey didn't win. So it's like, oh, Michelle must have had a great social game because Scott and Jason didn't feel personally threatened by her. And I've seen people like who are upset that Aubrey didn't vote for Gavin be like, Aubrey lost because she played a quiet social game and then she didn't vote for Gavin, who played similarly. And I thought my head was going to explode.
Again, yes, you're just defining social game in a way that lets you make an argument that you would not reuse ever again because you wouldn't be able to define social game the same way.
Which is why we love it. This is why we're always arguing about the social game. I mean, isn't that what we love to do? No, I mean, no, yeah. But anyway,
I think because the social game, sometimes the social game is, wow, Chris is able to get Lauren to play an idol on him, by Maleficent. Like, is that a social game or that strategy? Like, other times the social game is, I don't know, I like Fabio better than Chase.
Which, yeah. But also, this is a season where the very social game of the season was discounted by most fans because they hate the theme. What Chris did on the Edge of Extinction is social game. We didn't see it because we didn't see much of Edge of Extinction. But guess what? And most people hate it because they hate the goddamn theme. But guess what? He was buttering up the jury. Isn't that the social game?
Chris is social queen.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a season where
Oh, sorry.
No, you.
I was just going to say really quick. Also, the idea of the social game being the provider is not so. I mean, I think that's more of a survival thing. But yeah, that is not something people are generally like, oh, yes, Ken should have won because he went fishing.
Which is not a thing people say.
Yeah.
Right. Because, so they shouldn't they? Because isn't that social game? Isn't that making people comfortable? Isn't that making people happy around camp?
I mean, again, I guess that just goes into what you call the social game. Because, yeah, as much as Chris said that what he was doing there on the Edge was social game, I honestly wouldn't define being a provider as being a social game. I would define that as conforming to the survival aspects of Survivor, which isn't really much of a thing anymore. But for one very brief point in time was an important aspect.
I say because it's not a thing, it becomes a social game. Because when you do it and you make people's lives easier, that is part of social bonding. That is part of ingratiating yourself.
Yeah, but not if you're a fucking weirdo like Ken.
Well, yeah, obviously.
Well, and that's where we go to. Sometimes playing a good social game is just being charming.
Exactly.
Parvati has a great social game because she got Alexis and Natalie to do whatever she wanted because they liked her a lot. And I mean, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Parvati's social game is she has uncanny, almost supernatural personal charisma from anybody who's ever been around her. Is what they say. She could win over Jerry after slandering her for the first half of the season. Social game is to people like you or not, but for a certain subset of viewers, social game is this is how the people I like win, and this is how under the radar players used to win. And look, maybe, but also sometimes how those people won was going in the finals against a really shitty dude, and Gavin didn't.
And I think sometimes it's, actual strategy and tactics, which people are now kind of conflating with social game. And that's a different thing. There's the physical, and also not one tier of these shouldn't necessarily be better than another. There's the physical game, there's the strategic game, and there's the social game. And the social game is, as we said, people, and I think now a lot of people are just conflating social with strategic, and those are different in my mind, at least.
Well, I think you left out a fourth column in there, which is the emotional game, because our girl Julie, that was her strategy, the emotional game.
I mean, I guess that was
we should talk about Julie, because Julie got blanked at Final Tribal Council, which was the safest bet that I think
I got right.
Yeah, exactly.
I got Julie getting third and Wendy eventually leaving after predicting her every week. I wasn't even watching that week or the week prior when I got that one right.
Yes. It was the safest bet around that Julie was going to get third place, and she did. But, was there a reason that Julie got third place? I mean, is it just that she has these tremendous obstacles to overcome, these societal biases and survivor biases against her particular archetype? Emma, you go.
Thank you.
That's great.
I do think I was so prepared for Andy that, just leaving it open that I was ready to get in there. I do think that is a little bit of, I do think that's a part of it. I don't think we can completely divorce that, but I think that tribal where Julie went home just destroyed her. I think she was drawing dead at that point. I don't know, maybe. No, I don't know. I don't think there's anyone else in that game at that point who wouldn't have beat her. I think where the societal thing comes into it is that, you know, we probably could see, you know, say a Devens. I wouldn't quite equate his fake idol thing with that because it was the like going to get the idol, but I think maybe a dude could have a similar outburst and probably be fine. But I don't think it was like a good move.
I think the thing I go back to is just there's a certain bias where like Hannah in Millennials versus Gen X, when you see her acting emotionally, that's it. That's the internalized perception of Hannah from that point forward. Whereas if a guy had some emotional outburst, like Devens at that tribal council, like, oh, you're punking me in front of my kids, that can then be brushed aside later on. People will forgive that. Whereas for a woman, it tends to become like a defining character trait in a jury member's mind. So in that particular sense, yeah, she's kind of screwed. It's not that I think in any way she played a great game. I just don't think being an emotional player should be some automatic disqualifier. Like, I think,
I do think
back to Kara Moen, she was still a good player.
Right.
She was just
Dawn played circles around Julie, I think.
Sure.
I think with Julie, it's actually kind of similar to Gavin in that, you know, she was left alone after, you know, like she had Eric and Ron get blindsided, but was never targeted because people weren't worried about her the same way they were, you know, necessarily worried about Gavin. So there's not too much that she really did. Like, good on her, you know, at the beginning making like bonds and the comma 6 and all that, but they never went to tribal. We don't know what would have happened, so can't say.
I'll say this though, while I would say that she wasn't a great player, again, talking specifically to her archetype, I kind of enjoyed her as a character.
I did too.
I don't mind her being so emotional and stuff. Like, I think she was relatively fun. We've had more like blank slates in that spot before, whereas I think I at least had some kind of perception of who Julie was.
I don't think she was like terrible. You know, it's like, I think a lot of people say like, oh, if you're not a great player, then you must be awful. Like, it's sort of like Matt was saying about holding these winners to these higher standards. It's like you also have to hold apparently the like final 7 to this like crazy standard.
The bell curve is a thing, people.
Yes, exactly. I think she was obviously had flaws, but like was fine. You know, she was able to make alliances. She had a very strong pair. That's, you know, an important thing.
I mean, she got Lauren to help, you know, work with her or whatever. So, I like Julie. I've spoken well of her throughout the season. That I think she brought an interesting dimension to the show, and it shows that you don't just have to do crazy things to get time, because I think Julie was high on those confessional counts as well. Not as high as Rick or anything, but amongst all the non-Ricks, she was high. Non-Rick, non-returnees, I guess we should say. I mean, it's hard to say that, you know, her role in that she's thrust in didn't affect the fact that nobody ever viewed her as a contender at probably any point in the season. Even though she wins 2 immunity challenges, nobody cares. But at the same time, it's tough to be all like, my best strategic move was the time I looked like a crazy person.
Well, don't say crazy person, because crazy person has a lot of connotations there that go back to the
anybody who would have been like, I don't know what I'm doing tonight, I'm just a free agent. That wouldn't be a good look. Now, the comparison of like, you can have an outburst and then get forgiven. Ben had so many fucking outbursts that season, and you know, that's the better comparison, because I contend to this day that Rick wasn't having an outburst. He was, you know.
I agree that it was theater. I was just keeping it to the season, but
but Ben,
I agree about
Ben
that.
got the benefit
I forgot
of
about
doubt.
Ben. Let's be real.
Ben got the benefit of doubt, and John's entire point was that Julie and other women in her position don't get the benefit of doubt, and that we immediately label them crazy. Whereas, you know, I mean, again, I don't think crazy is the right word. She had an outburst, yes. But I don't think crazy is the right word there. She definitely is like, you know, like she has an outburst. But I also think
one. She was
what we were talking about that week, we're like, yeah, you should be pissed at the people you're allied with. They're throwing you under the bus here.
Yeah, but it looks like people are like, what is she doing, right? And I think it would be like, what is anybody doing when they're just like getting up and walking? What was JT doing? That was insane. So just that, but also it's just,
well, JT
that
was
was
crazy.
it. That was the only thing she could point to, right? And I think in this group, this was a very strategy heavy group. Right?
That's true. That is true. Well,
so it's even like, I don't know if her type would they barely ever have a chance. It sucks.
Yes.
But in this one is like emotional appeal ain't going to be it, because there isn't a lot of emotional players.
Right. And to that point, you have to know your jury. You have to know what they value to make your pitch. And both Julie and Gavin failed to consider that when making their pitch at Final Tribal. Julie considered that, Julie made this emotional argument pitch, which was the exact opposite of what this jury, when the jury heard that pitch, they were like, what the hell are you talking about? That makes no sense. Because to them, that makes no sense. That's not how they think. And then Gavin, when he made his pitch, he actively insulted what the experience they went through. So, I mean, yeah, you have to know the jury to make your pitch. Now, Julie could have played an emotional game, but she can't make her pitch based on that, not to the jury. She can make that to the audience, but that's different. Like Gavin did. You have to pitch to the jury.
Yeah, and obviously, sorry. Obviously, Chris had, a big advantage in appealing to the jury, having hung out with them for like 3 weeks. But it's not like this jury had really kept things close to the vest.
Exactly.
Chris had a huge advantage there, but they also saw this jury reacting like vocally and physically, like every tribal council.
Yeah, so this was not a shy jury.
Yeah, so they should know to a point. And obviously, they weren't Rick. They didn't have the idols in the show. So they know they can't make that appeal, but they at least know, to a point of what that jury is responding to. And they were responding to like big moves. So.
Yeah, I think one thing that just occurred to me while I was thinking about Julie and why I liked her as a character, I think it's just, she's a fellow parent, and I recognize in her a specific trait that I also have, which is that she only really had a strong bond with Ron. And I totally feel her, because I also don't have time to hang out with people that I'm not remotely 100% into. Like, you all are lucky I'm still on this podcast, but also
are we?
Well, ish.
He does a lot of the like Charlie jobs, so we are lucky that he's around.
That's true, exactly. But I mean, it's she hangs out with Ron, I assume, partly because they're roughly similar in age, and it's just like she can't deign to hang out with the 20-year-olds much. I'm sure she did. It seemed like Lauren maybe hung out with her and stuff, but like, I get it. I don't want to hang out with 20-year-olds right now. Like, I'm totally on board. Julie, you do you. It's not going to help you win the game, but I get falling into that.
Yeah, fuck off, Brad.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I gotta say, I don't know if it's a good idea to suggest that you being a parent gives you a different kind of perspective on life than other people on the internet. It seems to be a hot topic.
Hey, Terry Dietz, I think, was right on this, is what John is saying. And we should always respect the Terry Dietz hierarchy.
Underreported thing, though, related to what John was saying. That big controlling trio that wasn't getting the edit that Rick was getting, all like really young people. And maybe that's why. Victoria, Lauren, and Gavin are babies on a show that really doesn't know what to do with young people. Like, how young do you think? How young the youngest person, like decision maker in CBS? How young do you think they are?
Probably like 46.
Yeah, like
the youngest, and he's the hot, and it's probably a he, and he's probably like the hotshot younger kid who's like the son of a guy who did his job beforehand.
They call him Junior. Yeah,
right.
So like that maybe more than anything. I mean, I think the biggest thing is Rick is doing stuff and they're trying to get rid of Rick and they can't. But why maybe they didn't delve into their personalities and all that? It's like, I don't think the show knows what to do with young people unless they're specifically framing the show around their youngness, like a millennials versus Gen X thing, an Amazon type thing. And of course, that was 20 years ago when a lot of the people were younger, when Jeff might have felt like, oh, I can powwow with the young people. But like, it's an old people show, man.
It's not just an old people show, it's on an old people's network. Look at the demographics of who watches CBS.
So yeah, if like those three are sitting around discussing memes or whatever the kids these days do,
Oh my god, could you imagine if they're like actually
I would love it like Victoria, Gavin, and Lauren are sitting around, they're like, who do you think's gonna get milkshake ducked from our season?
I can imagine the editors being like, I don't know, let's go back to the newsman. Let's go to that guy with his stuff. I understand.
I watch local news. I understand these.
He makes the funny news sounds. That's
I
cool.
understand Rick. I understand Julie. I understand Ron. Hey, let's get more of Aurora's life experience. But all these 20-year-olds talking about their avocado toast and the fact that they can't afford rent, I don't give a shit about that. So, it might not be sexism so much as it's ageism, but also maybe a little bit of sexism.
It can be two things.
All right. I think we've gone through. Oh, you know what? We haven't talked enough about Victoria.
Sure, let's do that.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
I feel like we like residually worked that in there.
Yeah,
but go for it, Andy. You got some thoughts.
Well, more just as anybody else have final thoughts about Victoria. She was kind of our great hope throughout the season. John and I at specific points kept talking about like, no, I think she really is doing stuff. And honestly, I think we weren't wrong. I mean, I'm prone to never think that we were wrong, but I do think there was a path that was there.
Yeah.
I also kind of think that people started overrating her a bit.
I think her game fell apart a little at the end is what I think. And I, first of all, in a defense, I will say, I don't think some of her fans are just because of Twitter. Like I don't follow any of the new people on Twitter. So like I saw maybe 3 tweets she had posted. That wasn't like where the bulk of my fandom came. But yeah, like her there was stuff at the beginning that was fun. And so that was the hope, and she did a good job. And then voting the right way. But I think I'm not thinking of who it was. I guess it was the Eric vote. Sure, you can get away with. I think you can get away with her following along with that. But as I said before, I think with Aurora, she really needed to stand her ground there. I think she said that she didn't think she could get anyone to turn around to vote for Lauren because they wouldn't even vote for Julie. But I think that's just like, well, you obviously can't go to Gavin and Lauren about that. Go to Rick and Julie. Or no, not even Julie. Go to Rick and Aurora. You only need. Yeah. You could have done a 3-2-1 there. Had Julie vote for.
Rick would have done that.
Yeah, or I guess she would have been voting for Julie. Anyway, they could have. I think she could have tried to figure something out. I think she could have maybe convinced Gavin there if she was like, we can't beat her at the end because she's Lesu or something like that. I think voting out Aurora was a big mistake for a lot of reasons, and I think that showed she was a little too willing to just go with the flow. I think she needed, and some of that could be the age thing. She was 23. She's still older than Lauren, but I think Gavin's roughly that age as well, even though he just got married in the South. Is weird. But she just shouldn't needed to take a little more control like she had at the beginning, needed to do that at the end.
Yeah, we've talked in previous seasons too about how you can, there are times to expend your social and strategic capital in this game and then times to let it ride. That was probably a time where she needed to expend it. She needed to push back a lot harder. She needed to, if they weren't willing, find a plan B. And she didn't do it.
Right. And even if, say she can only get Rick and Aurora, she can't get Gavin or doesn't want to try. That's 3-3. Do you really think Julia or Gavin are going to go to Rocks for Lauren? Or are they going to let someone they might deem as somewhat of a threat go home there?
Right. And in that instance, if that was the move that she made, that would be her move. Yeah. That would be a thing that she could point to should she get to the final 3.
Moreover, it's a little more simple than that. If she can't convince Lauren and Gavin to vote for Julie, then she wasn't as in control as everybody liked to pretend she was. It's the same thing. If Aubrey couldn't convince people to vote for Michelle, then I guess she couldn't convince Joe, her number 1 main, to do it. Then she isn't in control. And look, that puts her par for the course. This was a game of everybody trying to take control for themselves instead of somebody else. But yeah, it's just so that was a bad move, because if Aurora's there instead of Julie, then there isn't this counter move against her at the very next vote. Yep. And yeah, I'm okay with what she did with Eric. I'm glad that she mentioned that she did not agree with it, but that was also the last time she had a voice in votes until like War Dog went home. So this idea that like, she was in control of this game was very much a counter Rick idea. It was like, Rick isn't doing anything. Those people are in control. It's like, well, now, but they weren't for as long as Rick wasn't in control of the game. Victoria herself admitted at certain points of the season, I'm just here along for the ride, waiting, and that happens.
Yep.
You stay alive, and then maybe things turn around for you. But there was this counter narrative that started to develop that like these three, they're the ones that have been in control this whole time. It's like that they're sort of in control for these next, these two most recent votes, except that of course all they can control is, okay, well, let's settle for somebody else, which isn't supreme level of control. So yeah, like she played a good game. I think she's a smart player. I'd love to see her again, but I already view this whole thing as like, oh, she was the amazing player of the season. I don't know that there was one. She was good.
Yeah, that's what I think. Like I said she was maybe the best instead of Rick, but I think A, that it was close, and B, that there was no great player this season.
Yeah, and I agree with that.
Honestly, Chris might have if he hadn't gotten voted out, which is a stupid asterisk, obviously. But like, if that one mistake hadn't happened, he did so much at the end that maybe he was a great player. We don't fucking know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe it was David. Maybe it was Kelly.
Yeah.
It wasn't Lauren. I'm going to rule that one out just based on, again, doing one of the stupidest things.
Victoria's great superpower is the fact that she always knew where the vote was going until she herself got voted out. She even knew where the final vote was going. That's why she voted for Brad.
All right, mark something for extinction. I'd like to nominate 2-hour podcasts.
Can I nominate Edge of Extinction?
Well, I mean, I think we kind of talked that at the beginning. Get the fuck out the paint. That sucked.
Yeah, we don't like that.
All right, so instead, how about this? Let's do Final Four fire making, because that seems to have like rustled some feathers when they introduced it, and it was sprung on the cast. Now it's become more of a fixture. People are still complaining about it because change is scary and terrifying. Is this something that we should keep around, Matt?
So this is what I gotta say. We saw the best possible case for keeping it around in this episode in terms of the drama of the moment. We saw someone give up immunity to try to knock out their biggest rival. And you know what? That moment was actually really great. I don't even care that, what followed after it, because that moment is legitimately exciting. You see someone do something that you have not seen before. And as I said, 2 years ago when we began this podcast, I am legitimately impressed by what Chris did there. I think it was a great move. And so, so this is the best possible case. So here's the thing. If you did not like that actual moment, and I'm not talking about what resulted from that moment, because you have to divorce it from the fact that Chris won. If you did not like that moment, you're never going to like this twist. You probably never did like this twist, and you probably think this twist is inherently unfair. Personally, I thought that was pretty cool.
Well,
I will say, you can go. You can go.
Since they did Final Four fire making, this is what we've gotten in some finales. We got what we got here. The person who has a ticket to the final dramatically taking out the winner, as opposed to just three people being like, yeah, Rick. Yeah, okay, Rick. Now, you might say, hey, that's unfair. That should have been their right to get rid of Rick. But it's more, they pushed that dramatic moment of who the winner of the season will be back 10 minutes. The other thing that happened was the only tie in the history of Survivor, which again would never have happened without this. So it's created interesting moments. So I think from like a dramatic television program trying to make their final episode more interesting, it's hard to deny that it's done that. But fire itself isn't all that interesting, like
that's what I was going to get
people
to.
Like putting together fire, even in this tense moment, and I want Rick to win. It's still just people making fire. So it's like I don't know if that's that, but it's like
the final four vote's not that interesting.
No, it hasn't been. All it's been is the other best player of the season getting taken out. That's what it's been.
Every time.
This whole Final Four club, and that's a problem for.
Or they tie it and it goes to fire.
Exactly. Then they go to fire.
Yeah.
Right.
I know the people who are dead set opposed to this because they have fairness things and competition structures and all that will never admit to this, but it's a problem for a TV show that the outcome is known halfway through the show. And I don't even mean halfway through the season. They have a 3-hour block of television, and we've always known what the end result was going to be long before that 3-hour block. This fire making has made that not true twice now. Twice. 2 out of 4 times that's made that true. I mean, Ben, we knew he was going to win fire because it was obvious that Ben was the winner of that season.
Right.
But frankly, this one, we knew Rick was going to win because he was obvious he was the winner of the season. And then look what happened. So
not everyone predicted Rick would win.
It result. Yeah, you predicted Lauren would win. So I don't know.
I got Chris in the final as 2, though. That's pretty close. I feel like I should get bonus points.
It's injected drama into the finale. Whether that's fair for the game, I don't know. Years of doing this podcast have made me into somebody who cares more about the entertainment value of the show than the fairness of the game.
Oh, so you agree that Micronesia is a great season then?
Maybe you're right.
Yes!
maybe
you heard it. You have to listen to 2.5 hours, but then you heard it.
Pretend I'm John Oliver now.
We got him! We got him!
The greatest shock in the history of Survivor would me be saying I'm wrong about that. So I don't know if I could bring myself to that point. But yeah, maybe I'm there with you guys. Maybe that season in the history of the show. I don't know.
Well, let me say one thing actually about the specific point that Ann just brought up. One thing that some people have complained about the past couple of seasons is that the reunion is now really short. Well, that's because the reunion does not have any drama, is usually pretty boring, and it's because they've moved all of the most important moments of the show later. We didn't even get to final tribal council until the last hour. Like, the fire making happened in the normal 2-hour block. So the whole point about Andy saying we don't know who, we usually know who the winner is halfway through the big show. We didn't know who the winner is until like 15 minutes before it was read.
I just want to point out before we move on, we got Andy to cave on Micronesia, and there was something else I'm going to need Matt and Emma to back me up here. There was something else I got him on a few weeks ago in Slack, and I was like, yes, I win. Finally brought an end to an argument from 2 years ago. I don't know when the hell it was, but I just remember finally being like, oh my God, finally, you're on board. He wasn't really, but I had just proved.
Yeah, it was about last season, and I wasn't on board.
Wait. Does this mean that John's ready to cave on the Electoral College?
No, never. Holding fast.
Could I perhaps discuss the fire making challenge?
Yeah, because we actually have to
please
decide whether we're even marking it for extinction or not.
Yeah. So I agree that particularly Ghost Island and this season, it was interesting. I get why the people are hesitant about it, because the way it was introduced to us had Jeff Probst saying that it's not fair that they get to vote out the best player, and that's dumb.
That is dumb.
That is a stupid thing to say. And
in fairness, maybe he's never seen Survivor.
And I understand that frustration, because that is just what a weird thing to say about Survivor. What I will say is, I think, and we'll have to see a couple more seasons to see if this pairs out. I think we may have reached kind of diminishing returns at this point. Are we going, because if we start getting ties all the time, if we start having people give up immunity all the time, I feel like that'll stop being interesting. That'll just be expected. People will, we're already getting to the point where people want to make fire rather than want to be taken. So it's going to be people no, I don't want to win immunity, or I want to win immunity just so I can give it away. No, don't give it to me. And eventually that's just gonna, if it does continue in that way, and it might not, that's just gonna be untenable and ridiculous.
Yeah, so it turns into the family reward challenge.
Right. So I think we're not quite at the marks for extinction thing, but I think we're on notice. It's endangered.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I don't think fire is here forever, but I think it's still here for the short term.
Yeah, I'm with Matt. I think that this is probably here for a little while, but I don't see it. Assuming this show carries on for, say, 10 more seasons, I don't know that this is around after 5, 6 more.
What I worry about is them trying to do something crazy at 5 instead, because it was like they did the final 3, you know, and now they're moving it to 4, and they're gonna be like, well, now our best player goes out at 5, you know, or something dumb. And I think they just need to accept that sometimes the best player gets voted out. That's how the fucking show works.
Yeah. And like I always said, it's not always just about the best player losing. It's just that like there's no contenders in the final. And there hasn't been since, you know, they sprung a final 3 in Cook Islands, or, you know, maybe Heroes versus Villains would be another one. But it's just like or, you know, everybody sucks in Nicaragua. So there has to be contenders. And it's just like, I think that was a problem that they needed to fix. And I think this is kind of fixed that at least once, and then at least, you know, push the drama down. But you do have to ask whether that's worth it, because it's still like, it's not that fair, right? It's just like, you know, get it all the way down here and then we can't get them out. And what's also interesting is that we've had
I thought they're just not a good player if they can't get them out.
They might not be, right? And that's the thing. Twice now, we were like, as soon as this was introduced, we were like, then they'll just get rid of them at 5. It's interesting that twice they haven't been, but this is, of course, where people are like, because of idols.
Yeah. So. Well, yeah, I mean, I do think, and yes, I think finding idols is a good thing. You know, that is probably a good sign, and playing it well is good. I do think it's a little ridiculous if, you know, there is never a point where you can vote someone out.
Oh yeah, no, idols need to be expired at 6, not 5, when there's a final 4 travel making. Absolutely, fire making.
But the problem is, like, that would be more fair. But that then just reintroduces the problem that they put fire.
Well, then they should have to just win immunity, because if they don't win immunity, then they're a bad player.
That's my point. Right? They want 2. My point isn't that they want one person to win. My point is they want 2 real contenders. If only one person can win immunity, then the other person can have an idol, and then maybe we can have 2 people longer in the show than not. So that's what I'm convinced that they're trying to do. And like, it's not always going to happen. They'll get them out with 5, or maybe there's just not 2 contenders. But twice now there has been later in the season than any other time before.
Yeah.
Even though one of them they had to parachute in at the last fucking what do we think about the season? Final thoughts on the season. Is it the worst season ever?
No.
Emily.
Emma. So I actually had something interesting to say about this. So for me, I feel like with this season, I finally kind of get, even though I still disagree with those opinions, I finally get the people who like Nicaragua and Gabon. Like, I don't love this. I mean, so again, very tempered understanding, because I don't love this season. I would probably put it in the bottom half, but not, you know, I am not good enough with numbers to be able to tell if it's bottom 3rd or whatever, but definitely not the bottom 5. But I think there was some enjoyment in just how like crazy it was. And I liked it better than a Gabon or Nicaragua, because I didn't find anyone to be like completely distasteful. Even people I didn't personally enjoy watching or found completely hypocritical in their stance of animal rights was not someone who was like, there was no Nyanka, there was no Corinne or Randy, who are not characters I enjoy. I know some people do. That kind of unpleasantness is not entertaining to me. That's why I rate Worlds Apart so low. So I got some enjoyment just because it was so like nuts, and there wasn't anyone I hated in like a moral way. There were people like I hated, quote unquote, because I like found them annoying or annoying. But yeah, as long as there's not someone I just find like completely detestable, it's usually enough to keep a season out of my bottom 5, because there's been enough of those seasons with like just bad people.
Yeah, no, and I completely agree with Emma. I don't think it's in my bottom 5. I think a more interesting question than like where do I rank it specifically is like, how do I compare it to some of the recent seasons that we here have not liked that much, like Ghost Island, like Game Changers, like Heroes, Hustlers, Healers, or whatever it is. I think this is a season that is better than HHH, which I think is easily the worst of those 3.
Lower the bars.
Yeah, low bar. I know. I'm not sure it's better than Ghost Island and Game Changers, though.
I mean, I famously don't hate Ghost Island. Like, again, I don't love it, but I think there are boring stretches. But to me, any season that has like 2 or 3 like standout episodes is at least not like a hated season for me. And for me, that had that. It helps that I was rooting for Wendell early on, rather than just like, well, it's gonna definitely be either Dom or Wendell. So I had some investment there. And I get that for other people. So Game Changers is just such a hard season to rank.
It is.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with that, because like the beginning, there are parts of it that are very fun, but then it's just so, I just don't know what to do with that. Yeah,
on various levels of bad.
Show, right? Exactly. Yeah, like that moment would make me rank it, I feel like, below Edge of Extinction or even Heroes Hustlers, even though it also had legitimately entertaining moments.
Yep.
But then it also had like shitty, but it's like I almost just want to just throw it out. I so badly just wish they'd like that season failed on every level. Like casting, what happened, just the end game, everything about that was just a mess.
Right. Whereas, go ahead. I've been talking a lot here.
Can I talk? For me,
no.
For me, this season was not great. I mean, generally, I'm very big on casting, and I care a lot about like my enjoyment of the season. Often has to do with how much I liked the players on the season. I don't think we had many like breakout casting finds here. There were some that were good. I mean, we mentioned some already: Devens, Victoria, those sorts of people. There's just none that I'm like desperate to see again. The returnees were fine. Overall for me, this season's going to be pretty low, not bottom of the barrel. I mean, like Emily said, you're not like hitting the lowest of lows, but at the same time, like it wasn't a great season for me. The twist was bullshit in a way that we expected it might be. And it couldn't be saved from that, but it didn't have enough characters, players, entertainment to save it from that bullshit, which previous seasons that had some bullshit did. Like Coral Islands clearly had some bullshit, but it's a great season that was saved by amazing.
If their bullshit ended at the merge.
Yep,
the truth.
I think just to actually answer the question Matt asked, I would rate it below Ghost Island. I think maybe about equal, or at least roughly equal to Heroes Hustlers, just on first thought. And then, as I said, I don't know what the fuck to do with Game Changers. I can't rank that season.
Fair. Andy, what did you think of the season?
First, I got a question for everybody, but it's about John. What do we think the last season where John didn't go out and say, I didn't really like that many people on this season? Because I feel like he says that at the end of every season.
No, David and Goliath, he liked people.
Exactly.
Yeah. Who are you championing in David and Goliath? Because I'm sure, I feel like...
Lena.
That's one.
Chris Noble.
That was Ghost Island.
Wait, shit, that was... Oh my God, you're right. Jesus Christ, I forgot that.
Ghost Island higher than
it is very late, and we've been going for very long. I'm sorry.
Even Millennials versus Gen X is like, there was a star in Michaela and Jay, but nobody else. It's like, I feel like what happens with John is... When we get to the end of a season, he's like, I'm done with all of these people.
He also doesn't even like Michaela as much as we do, because she wasn't as good as Sydney, so that doesn't mean she can't be entertaining. That's not a thing he
remembers happening, Emma. You and I remember it happening, but he'll always remember the greatest. I was like, but anyway, that's for me. It's not in the group of the worst seasons. It's just not. I enjoyed it most of the time. The end was a big pile of bullshit.
But at least it was crazy, I guess.
And that obviously hurts it quite a bit. So either it's like the best of the bad seasons or it's just above that tier. But frankly, the worst part of this season was the goddamn internet. And that's been true of many seasons. And like, I think, I mean, I like our site. I like the people who comment, even when I disagree with them. I think it's still a healthy way of discussing. But I feel like Survivor Twitter has become as toxic as any of the other environments that we make fun of. And I'm not excluding myself as a participant in that. But it's just like, we don't know how to discuss things anymore without outrage. And I get it, because the world is fucking awful. And, it makes us angry about everything right now, but maybe less so about this stupid TV show, or at least wait until it actually deserves that. So I don't know. That's like why I had to help back. And frankly, why I came back from a vacation after having been away from it and being like, you know what? This season ain't bad. And everybody's like, that's probably true. And I think a big part of it is because I wasn't in the discussions. And then suddenly I start seeing the discussions, and it's like an episode would be end and be like, hey, that was kind of fun. There were some things, whatever. And then I realized, oh, no, apparently it was awful. So, and I think that was been true for a while. And it made me think like, maybe I should not be there. Both because I'm part of the problem. I'm not exactly a nice guy about any of this, right? I'm right there, being an asshole, especially on that platform, when I only have 140 characters. I don't know.
280.
Yeah, there you go. That's true. But I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm rather verbose about my feelings. So it's like, I think next season, because goddamn, there's going to be a lot to complain about for next season. I don't think the statues can just get us through.
No, they can. They absolutely can. I believe in them.
Our War Dog jokes and our Joe jokes didn't stop people from making this like the great next battlefield of which they were going to fight about. We tried to have fun with this show. We try to have fun with this show, and there are a lot of people who just don't want to have fun with this show. And it's like, maybe I shouldn't be there because it's not like I'm making it a better place.
No, I know what you mean. Oh, sorry, John, you go.
I'm just so personally hurt by the disparaging of season 39 before we even get there. Look at the fucking avatar talking to you right now. Look at that thing.
Maybe I can foresee people complaining when most of the edit goes to Boston Rob. Maybe it's a thing that I can envision happening.
But at least you'll like it.
You guys,
I won't, because I'll be having to defend myself on the fucking internet. So maybe I should just sit back and watch and be like, hey, at least I get to see Boston Rob and Sandra, two of my favorite players.
Hey, speaking of that, guys, check this out. Look at this avatar right here. Now, Andy, talk.
It's gonna pull the attention away.
Yeah. It's an avatar. It's not a Boston Rob statue. It's an Andy statue.
Yeah, I can kind of see it.
See? Now I want this statue to yell, "How about them fake idols, though?"
I bet there's one like hidden at the base of it. Look, on the record, real quick about season 39. I think the twist is the dumbest fucking thing I've ever.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Dumber than this one.
I was gonna say, even coming off Edge of Extinction, it's a dumb twist.
Like, I took time off of applying, like, Redmond was posting, like, hey, they're looking at applications. Now's a good time to apply. And I was like, I'm planning a wedding. That's too busy. And now all these twists are happening. I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know.
You'll never find a bigger supporter than me of Boston Rob on the Survivor internet, because it somehow is an unpopular opinion that the guy's been good at television and this game. I'm not. This is not what I want, man. This is not what I want out of this. Just that, just camera hoggy. Talking to people who are actually playing the game. It's not good. This is not a good idea, and it will be war out there. And frankly, the worst part about it is I will kind of agree with them that it is bullshit. That the time for these players are going to Rob and Sandra, and God help us all if it's more Rob than Sandra.
So, the Fast and Furious series, from what I gather, because I'm not someone who watches movies.
Me neither. Well, I watch movies, just not those. So.
They lean into the fucking ridiculousness, right? Like, people watch knowing how good it is. How dare you disparage Survivor doing the exact same thing and steering into the ridiculousness?
I mean, we steer into the ridiculousness now too, and I think it is fun until you go out of where we are, and it's like, oh wait, no, we're not allowed to have fun. This isn't fun. This is the battleground of which everything should be fought upon. And frankly, like, it's unfortunate because like there's some battles that were worth fighting, and there's criticisms worth having, but it's just like I need to save that energy for other things than this show.
Yeah, I would say, if you want to have the battleground, maybe let it take a pause for 39. Because if you saw that preview, how do you feel any other way than, oh, this is going to be fucking ridiculous? Like, set your mindset appropriately. When we get to season 40, maybe you switch it back and you're like, okay, we're diving back into the real game. We had a fun little break and went wacky for 2 seasons. Now we're coming back and doing a real game.
Boston Rob is going to lead the confessional counts in a season that he's not competing in.
This is probably true. But then again, hey, look, hey, we have had themes where we have talked ahead of time that they are the most ridiculous thing ever. And I'm not talking about Cook Island here.
And David versus Goliath.
Those were the 2 I was referring to. And those are the 2 best recent seasons.
Yep.
Yeah. So, like, sometimes it's surprised. Look, the worst case scenario is probably the more likely in 39's case, which is, as Andy said, Boston Rob leading in confessionals. But I got hope. Maybe it's not. I'm trying to be optimistic here. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, what if like a troll god comes on as part of the cast and spends their confessionals making fun of the statues and Boston Rob?
Oh my God! I mean,
this washed old man with his stupid accent and his bee hat. Like, I might have to change allegiances if that were to happen.
You know they're going to cast someone from Boston for the season, right? They're going to cast some guy from Boston for this season.
Oh God! Can you imagine 2 Bostons just talking in Boston at each other?
You know what's gonna happen?
The sexiest accent in America.
Oh!
Or wait, was it Philadelphia? I can't remember.
Philly was 8. Philly was 8.
So the fun thing that's going to happen is there's decent enough odds, right, that someone's going to get sent to the island, get some advice from Boston Rob and Sandra, and then get immediately voted out, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
That has to happen.
Yes.
Yeah. So come on, like, lean into it. It's gonna be.
We'll have fun. Great. We've proven that we can have fun. It's just, do we think Twitter is going to have fun?
No, that's who I'm.
Do we think Twitter is capable of having fun?
Do we think our commenters are gonna have fun? I don't think so.
They had fun with the War Dog thing. Shout outs to our commenters.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
Frankly, they didn't get angry at the Joe stuff like we kind of hoping they were.
No, they love the Joe stuff.
They rolled with it pretty quickly. So let's have some fun, people, for season 39.
Yeah.
Because, oh my God. Oh my God.
Oh, man.
All right.
Amazing.
Anything else? We got another couple hours. Let's
God, no.
Hey, come on. I predicted 4 hours on this baby, and we still got time to go.
Oh,
can you believe that Rob does this like every fucking week? Like 5 shows?
Yeah, this is an RHAP episode. This is an RHAP episode that we just recorded here.
Yeah, and this is one. He does multiples.
To be fair, it's his job?
Like, that is his full job.
Oh, are you guys not getting paid?
Let me check my bank account and.
Well, shout out to Rob. Keep doing what you're doing, which is not listening to our podcast.
Exactly. So I want to do a quick thank you. Normally, at the end of a season, Andy would go through and thank individual commenters. Blah blah blah. That takes too long, and it's really fucking late for us East Coast people.
We got too popular. What can I say?
Exactly. So I would just like to issue a blanket thank you to all of our subscribers, listeners, readers, Twitter friends, and Twitter enemies, beloved commenters, not Reddit, but you all make the Survivor experience generally more enjoyable than it is painful. So thank you all. It's been awesome. Except you, Saturday Night Policy. Fuck that
guy. If you want still more content from us on the website, we have some people covering The Amazing Race, which may or may not still have Survivor people on it. Survivor South Africa, we are going to start up coverage of that.
By we mean other people. Just
shout out
4 of us are doing jack shit this offseason.
Nothing. So it's Timber Boy twice. It's Assistant Dragon Slayer and Blurry Denzel.
Who I met, and it was fun.
Shout out. So that's on the website. Follow us all the ways you can get that if you care. Instead, Matt and I, we're gonna keep pushing out content for like the 15 to 20 people who want to hear it. That's over at the Infinity Stone podcast. That's our website. That's our podcast. That's our YouTube channel. Recently, we recorded an episode on Avengers Endgame. I hear a few people have seen that. The movie, not the podcast.
Well, literally a few people.
Right, exactly.
We will be coming back in a couple weeks covering Venom. Then you have the Spider-Man movie, and then like Marvel isn't making movies for a long time, so we're gonna find something else to do. And I think that's all we really have to say, right?
All right, let's hit some.
Follow us on Twitter. Follow me at Purple Rock Emma because I crave the attention.
I don't care. Don't follow me.
Yeah, don't follow Matt. He's with us.
I may or may not tweet anymore after what I said, but if I do, it's because, like Emma, I crave the attention.
Andy and I are more alike than people realize.
It's like I know I shouldn't. I'm such an asshole. But it's just like, and again, they make me angry. And it shouldn't. It's a stupid show. And
but then those notifications come pouring.
But sometimes I write things and people like it, and I feel like a god king for a second.
Yeah.
Rob
laughed at something I said at the finale. It was amazing.
But yeah, and then there's the show is Purple Rock Pod. It will continue to tweet, even if I am ambivalent to
getting a Stephen Fish back at every opportunity.
All right, and now
he wore the hell out of that suit, John.
He did.
I'm going to put some music on the end of the audio version of this.
And it's from our buddy Mike Hirsch.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.